College of Commerce, and Professor K.S. Birban Singh, Dean, School of Human and Environmental Sciences, and the Principal, DMU College of Science, DMU in absentia. And faculty members of the Department of Anthropology, Dhanamanjuri University, research scholars, students, and ladies and gentlemen. I feel privileged to be here, particularly among the teachers and the students of the Department of Anthropology, Dhanamanjuri University, to share some of my thoughts with them on this very important day, World Indigenous Day. At the very outset, I do impart my sincere thanks and the gratefulness to the organizers for giving me the opportunity of gracing this function as a resource person. Very truly speaking, from the core of my heart, I feel unfit for this. But anyway, as a student of anthropology, on this important occasion, I shall take the opportunity of sharing some of my thoughts on the indigenous people, as well as the theme of the World's Indigenous Day 2025, Indigenous Peoples and Artificial Intelligence, Defending Rights and Shaping Futures. Anyway, my speech will comprise 3 parts. The first part, I will try to speak on the academic understanding of the indigenous people. As we all understand, the term indigenous has occupied a central stage in our academic discourse as well as in our day-to-day conversation. Frankly speaking, or truly speaking, indigenous word has become a household word among ourselves. But what do this term really mean is to be analyzed from the academic perspective. So when we analyze the term indigenous from the academic perspective, we should try to understand the meaning of the term from 3 important perspectives, or from 3 important philosophies. If we happen to analyze the literature available on indigenous people, theoretically as well as epistemologically, we can divide the whole literature into 3 main groups. 1, 3 main philosophies or 3 main logics. The first logic is power justice logic. Second logic is this right justice logic. Third one is the compassionate value-oriented praxis. So we can analyze the term indigenous from these 3 logical or epistemological perspectives. When we analyze the terminology indigenous people from the power justice logic or power justice philosophy, we define indigenous people from the chronological perspective. So when we define indigenous people from the chronological perspective, we define it on the basis of the power justice logic. So when we speak of indigenous people from this logic, we generally mean the autochthones or the first settlers of a particular place as indigenous people. And this concept has been adopted by the International Labour Organization when it is discussed in the Forum of the United Nations Organization. So when we define indigenous from this perspective, we generally mean that indigenous people or indigenous population should be understood from the perspective of the chronology. This is a brief understanding, brief concept. And when we define this indigenous from the concept of the right justice perspective or right justice epistemology, we define it from the relational perspective. So sometimes these indigenous people, rather than defining from the chronological perspective, we can define it from the relational perspective also. When we speak of the relation, so it is a bit different from the chronological perspective. So a particular community may not be the first settlers of a particular place, though they are not the first settlers of a particular place. They may be defined as indigenous population or indigenous people in relation to other major communities inhabited in a particular area. So generally this definition is followed in African continent because most of the Africans inhabiting in different countries of Africa are not original settlers, but all of them like to define as indigenous people or indigenous population relationally from the perspective of their colonial exploitation or from their colonial experience. So during the colonial rule in Africa, they were very much exploited by the colonial and the imperial administrators. So from that perspective, though they were not the original settlers or original inhabitants of a particular country, all of them like to identify as indigenous population or as indigenous people from this relational perspective. Even in the context of India, some of the communities like to define themselves as indigenous from this relational perspective rather than defining them as indigenous from the chronological perspective. The third logic or the third epistemology is compassionate value-oriented praxis. This compassionate value-oriented praxis, as we understand, today all over the world, everybody is speaking about inclusion in terms of development, inclusive development, then in terms of growth, inclusive growth. So anybody may be defined as indigenous from this compassionate, value-oriented praxis as indigenous, in the sense that a community may be very much exploited, though they are not original inhabitants of a place, or though they are not defined as indigenous from the relational perspective. In spite of their late arrival in a particular place, and in spite of the exploitation by the administration or some other agents, seeing the condition of the exclusion in the present situation, they may be defined as indigenous. So in such a way, if we go through the academic literature on indigenous people, we find that indigenous people have been defined from these three logical or epistemological perspectives, namely that is what power justice, right justice, and compassionate value-oriented praxis. Or in other words, we may define indigenous people from the chronological perspective or from the relational perspective or from the normative perspective. When we define a particular community as indigenous people on the basis of the compassionate, value-oriented praxis, then we define indigenous people from the normative understanding or from the normative philosophy. So in such a way, what I like to share with you all is all of us assembled here belong to the academic fraternity anthropology. It is a bit, but I should say, fit to try to understand the concept of indigenous from the academic perspective. Then, in addition to this, then indigenous people have been defined in different ways. When we are speaking of the indigenous technology, when we are speaking of the indigenous knowledge, when we speak of the indigenous technology, it generally refers to the local technology. So I will not speak much on this point because of the time constraints. So anyway, what I like to share with all you gathered here is that indigenous people, academically speaking, has been defined from three perspectives, as well as it has also been defined in various ways as it fits in the local situation. So this is all about the indigenous people. So now let me come to the theme of the World Indigenous Day. Indigenous people and artificial intelligence, defending rights and defending rights and shaping futures. So, before coming to the point straight, I also would like to share a thought on the use of the appendages, population or peoples. Some authors prefer to use the appendage population rather than people. And some authors prefer to use the appendage peoples. So even in the drafting of the United Nations Declaration on Indigenous People, Sanders used the term population rather than people. So nowadays, the terminology peoples have become popular among the people. So that's why even today, United Nations use the term indigenous peoples and artificial intelligence. So what I like to share with you all is that when you are speaking or writing something on indigenous peoples or population, it depends upon your choice whether will you use it from the chronological perspective, whether you use it from the relational perspective, or whether will you use it from the normative perspective, or whether will you use it as a people or as a population. This is the academic varieties. So according to your choice and according to your affiliation, we can use the terminology indigenous, population, as we like sometimes. Now let me come to the this theme of the World Indigenous Day 2025. The theme itself seems to be paradoxical in the sense that one is the defending rights and another one is shaping futures. I think it's paradoxical in the sense that we get two important opposite consequences from the use of the artificial intelligence. First perspective is artificial intelligence may be employed in exploiting the indigenous people. If artificial intelligence is found to be used in the exploitation of the indigenous people under that circumstances, the question of defending the rights has come. So, defending the right of the indigenous people conveys the meaning that artificial intelligence may be used or utilized in the exploitation of the cultural rights and the existential rights of the indigenous people. Then the second part of the theme, shaping futures. Shaping future means we should shape the future of the indigenous people by exploiting the benefits of the artificial intelligence. So, if we like to shape the future of the indigenous people using artificial intelligence, there we will discuss the positive aspects of the artificial intelligence. So that's why the themes for defending rights and shaping future seems to be a bit paradoxical. One perspective of the artificial intelligence is to employ it to defend the rights of the indigenous people, and the second one is the use or the benefits of the artificial intelligence should be taken care of while we are shaping the future of the indigenous people. So anyway, now let me come to the first point, defending what? Rights. Defending rights of the artificial people, indigenous people. So here, let me speak on three important points, three or four important points. It may take a long time also if we discuss all these things in detail. So let me brief. Today, we are very much speaking of the sovereignty. When we are speaking of sovereignty, we think that it generally connotes the meaning of political sovereignty. Here, in the context of the indigenous people, yes, political sovereignty is also a question. What is more important than the political sovereignty of the indigenous people is the knowledge sovereignty. Knowledge sovereignty. Knowledge sovereignty, or what our rights, knowledge rights, power knowledge rights. So, knowledge sovereignty. For example, let me cite some examples. Today, majority of the indigenous people across the world have lost their food sovereignty. How many of us are very much aware of our ethnic food? There is invasion of the international food, multinational food companies. Today we are very much speaking of the KFC. KFC is found to be very much popular among the young people. You are not very much conscious of the ethnic foods. Who are speaking about the importance of the ethnic food? Going to the KFC restaurant, taking the items from the KFC has become a question of the day. So it has become a part of our popular culture. So in such a way, majority of the indigenous peoples across the world have lost their food sovereignty. So many scholars, including anthropologists, are very much speaking against the international food invasion. Because of the food invasion, alien food invasion, now indigenous people have lost food sovereignty. So this is one domain to be discussed when we are speaking or when we are discussing defending the rights of the indigenous people. So this is one area where the academics as well as activists should focus. If the academics and the cultural activists, including the people, do not focus on the loss of the food sovereignty of the indigenous people, with the loss of the food sovereignty, the indigenous people will also lose its identity, because food itself is a cultural artifact in one sense. Therefore, we should try to defend the food sovereignty of the indigenous people. Number two important point is the knowledge sovereignty. Indigenous people have suffered webs of exploitation. The first web of exploitation of the indigenous peoples are the effect of the colonialism and the imperialism. During the period of imperialism and the colonialism, indigenous people have been exploited to a large extent. So, because of that exploitation, indigenous people are not at par with the people in the mainland area or main continents. Then, after colonialism, yes, in the middle of the 20th century, many of the colonial countries of Asia and of Africa freed themselves from the colonial yoke. Though they freed from the colonial yoke of the West, still they suffer webs of post-colonialism. So, this post-colonialism, in post-colonialism, we find a very, very disastrous form of exploitation. That form of exploitation is known as biocolonialism. Majority of the indigenous people living in Africa and Asia are found to be suffering from this kind of biocolonialism. It is very interesting. Let me cite you an example. There is a tribe called San in West Africa. They are hunters and gatherers. So, in a year, they have to do a hunting expedition as a part of their life ways. During their hunting expedition, they are not allowed to take anything. In other words, they have to remain starved for days together. Then what do they? So during this period of hunting expedition, as they are not allowed to take any food, they will take the milk of a cactus found in their locality. By taking the milk of the cactus, they don't feel hungry. They don't feel hungry. So in such a way, they use the milk of a cactus found in their locality. Then what the scientists or what the anthropologists and what the gene hunters and what the so-called academics from the developed world do? They collected the milk of the cactus and they test the composition of the milk in the lab of the chemistry department. So, in such a way, they can find out the chemical composition of the lab. After establishing chemical composition of the milk in the lab, then Africa government established patent right over the milk. So then they sold it. The South African government sold the patent to the American giant pharmaceutical company, Pfizer. What did Pfizer do? Pfizer made tablets to treat obesity in the West. Today, as we understand, obesity has become a problem of the West. Everybody is gaining weight. So, if they take the tablet manufactured from that milk, then they will not feel hungry for many days. In such a way, as a medicine for treatment of obesity, Pfizer has earned millions of dollars using the knowledge of the Shan community. This is the ample example of the biocolonialism. I have cited one example. There are thousands of examples in the literature of biocolonialism. So in this way, it is very much necessary to defend our, what I should say, knowledge sovereignty. Knowledge sovereignty of the indigenous people is to be defended. If we do not defend the knowledge sovereignty of the indigenous people, then with the loss of the indigenous knowledge, the identity of the identity of the indigenous people will also be in the way. So this is example. This is one example. So we can cite many examples. Nowadays, as per Education Policy 2020, local contents has gained, inclusion of the local contents in the syllabus has gained momentum. So nowadays, we are very much speaking in our anthropology also, there may be many scholars who are working on ethnomedicine. So ethnomedicine is a time-tested knowledge, is not it? So it should be recorded. Therefore, one of the important area of defending the rights of the indigenous people is what? Food sovereignty as well as data sovereignty and the what? Registration of the patent. If we do not work in this line, then what? Indigenous people may be punished before our eyes. So this is one of the important areas of defending the rights. Then another information, another domain of defending rights is the misinformation and the disinformation. You might have heard about the misinformation and the disinformation. Disinformation may be treated as biasness. And what? This misinformation, wrong information may be given ignorantly. But sometimes if we give wrong information, what? With an intention, it is called biasness and the disinformation. It is very important, it is very crucial in our anthropology. When we are writing ethnography, we are representing a community. Representation has become a question in anthropology today. So many scholars in anthropology are now speaking about the replacement of the colonial ethnography by the postmodern ethnography. In postmodern ethnography, we are very much speaking about the representation of a culture. How can we represent a culture? Other than this, we are also speaking about the ethnic point of view and the ethic point of view in our anthropology. Also, you may be very much aware of all these things. Before coming the wave of the postmodern ethnography, we come across the concept of ethnic and the ethic, insider's viewpoint and outsider's viewpoint, and ethnographers are always asked to follow the insider's viewpoint rather than the outsider's viewpoint. But this concept has been replaced by the concept of new ethnography today in the postmodern era. Therefore, representation is a form of exploitation. Misrepresentation or disinformation. This information is also a form of the exploitation. In this respect, we have to defend our right. If we happen to go through the postmodern literature, you might have heard about the Edward Said. Edward Said first write the book, Orientalism. Orientalism is an academic exercise of misrepresentation of the people. Said is of the opinion that Orientalism is a construction of the West. Orientalism is not the construction of the people. Here even let me cite you an example contextually. Today we are known as Northeast Indians. Who has constructed this concept of Northeast? Do we construct the concept, or do the others construct it and we accept it? Truly speaking, the concept of Northeast has been constructed by the others, not by us. And the concept itself has been happily accepted by the people. But there is a misrepresentation. When you go to Delhi, the other Indians living in other parts of the country will take Northeast as a homogeneous area, physically, culturally, ethnically. They categorize us as a homogeneous group. If we go to the ground reality, is it correct? It is not correct. Northeast India is not culturally homogeneous, linguistically not homogeneous. So in such a way, misrepresentation, misinterpretation, or sometimes biasness is very much clear. So in many of the colonial ethnographies, the people have been misrepresented. The culture of the people has been misrepresented. They have written ethnography from their point of view, not from our point of view. For example, if you happen to go through the Maltese written by Hudson, Hudson is of the opinion that the smell of chinni is very much unagreeable. Really, is it unagreeable to us? The smell of chinni is very much agreeable to us. So from their Western perspective, smell of the chinni is not agreeable. So we are taking fermented fish. The smell of the fermented fish is very much agreeable to us. When we feel the smell of the fermented fish, we feel hungry. But if someone coming from other parts of the country, when they have the smell of this fish, fermented fish, they will feel vomiting. Is not it? So in such a way, misrepresentation and the disrepresentation. So if we do not defend our right of misrepresentation and disinformation, then the right of the indigenous people will be very much undermined. Here, let me cite an example of Huntington. Huntington of the Harvard University wrote a book on what? On class of civilization. A new world order. He is of the opinion that the conflict between the East and the West, the divide between the South and the North, is nothing but a class of the civilizational values. The civilizational value of the West is based on the unitary concept of the logic, whereas Hindu civilization and the culture, Muslim civilization and the culture, Confucian civilization and the culture is not based on the unitary concept of this logic. That's why class has been awkward. But if we go deeper, what I like to say is that Huntington is losing seeing the trees while looking at the forest. When we look at the forest from a distance, we do not see the trees. If we go closer and closer to the forest, we will be able to see the identity of the trees. So many of the academics from the West see the culture of the East from a distance. They don't understand they don't understand the inner dynamics. They don't understand the inner constituents of the culture as they try to understand the culture from a distance, not from a close range. In our anthropological literature, we are very much asked by our academic forefathers to follow the concept of the participant observation. Today, very frankly speaking, from the core of my heart, how many of the research scholars are doing field work for 1 year? Nobody is interested to stay in the field for 1 year. They will visit their fields occasionally. They will write everything as they wish. Are you really sure that by visiting a field site for 10 times or 15 times, will you be able to represent the insider's viewpoint? So in such a way, our anthropology is also dying. Very frankly speaking, we have our own responsibility. Being a research scholar of the anthropology, being a student of the anthropology, being the teachers of the anthropology, we have to take these risks. Otherwise, anthropology will die. And the identity of the anthropology will vanish before our eyes if we do not represent the people in a correct perspective. Fieldwork is very much necessary. Nowadays, fieldwork has become an essential part of the other subjects. But decades ago, fieldwork was a part of the anthropology. So it occupied an important place in our anthropological research. Malinowski himself coined the term participant observation. The concept of the participant observation is not very clear about our students. One of my students told me that he himself met present in a marriage ceremony and he collected the data, and he told me that he has collected data through participant observation. Is it participant observation? By writing something about a ritual, attending the ceremony. In such a way, In such a way, the ethics of the anthropology is found dying. Today, I am speaking in connection with the defending of the rights of the indigenous people. While speaking on this point, I am also reminding to defend the rights of the anthropologists. Please do keep this in your mind. So misrepresentation and disrepresentation, misinformation and disinformation, biasness and misinformation. So this is the second domain to be taken care of. If we do not take care of this domain, then we will not be able to defend the rights of the indigenous people. Then third one is today, very frankly speaking, the whole population of the globe can broadly be divided into two today, from the digital perspective. One is the digital natives, another one is the digital immigrants. I belong to the group of digital immigrants because I was not born in the digital era. I was born before digital era. So I migrated to the digital era today because all of you, particularly research scholars, students sitting before me, all of you are digital natives. All of you are digital natives. But I am a digital immigrant. And very frankly speaking, I am computer illiterate. But all of you are very much digital literate and the computer illiterate. But here, one important point, divide is there. Digital divide is there. So in anthropology, we use two important terms, illiterate and non-literate. Illiterate means if a person is found uneducated, in spite of the availability of all the educational facilities, he is called illiterate. In spite of the availability of all the facilities, he remains uneducated. Is not it? But there are people who do not have facilities for education. Because of the non-availability of the facilities of the education, many of the people remain uneducated today. Those people who remain uneducated because of the non-availability of the educational facilities are called non-literate people. They are not illiterate, they are non-literate people. So many of the indigenous people, majority of the indigenous people are digital illiterate. This is the thing what I like to share with you. So there is a digital divide between two groups of population, digital literate population, digital non-literate population. Indigenous people belong to the digital non-literate people population. So if we do not give facilities for digital education to the non-literate people, majority, then what I like to say is this: if we do not give digital facilities to the non-literate people will not be able to protect or to defend their knowledge sovereignty. So, to defend knowledge sovereignty of the indigenous people, it is very much important to bridge the digital divide, to bridge the digital gap. So, in such a way, digitalization of the indigenous people, or particularly these native computer natives amongst the indigenous people, is very much necessary to defend their knowledge domain. This is the third area. The fourth area about defending the rights is the what? Today we are very much speaking about what? About biometrics. Is not it? Today we are very much speaking about biometrics. Today we are very much speaking about the gene pools. Today we are very much speaking about our face recognition. So in this computer we have face app for face recognition. Then at the same time, government is also taking or is also collecting what? Bioinformation. Is not it? Biometrics for different reasons. While doing this, if we do not make appropriate laws to defend the privacy of the indigenous people, then indigenous people will not be able to defend their rights. Appropriate legal measures or appropriate laws should be framed by the government to protect the privacy of the indigenous people. If we are free to give our genetic information to others, for example, in our anthropology lab today, we are very much speaking about the what is this molecular anthropology or molecular genetics, is not it? While we are doing molecular genetics and the molecular anthropology, we have to collect genomes, gene information from the other population. So by exploiting the indigenous people, I may become professional, I may become associate professor. So if we do not give ethics, if we do not give academic ethics or scholarly ethics, some of the scholars may be very much involved in exploiting the indigenous rights of the indigenous people. So it is very much necessary to think about these four domains while we are speaking of the what? Indigenous peoples. Then what about the shaping of the futures? Then how can we use the merits of or the usefulness of the artificial intelligence in defending the rights of the what? Indigenous people? Today, in the first session of this occasion, one of the learned teachers of the department have spoken about the endangered languages. He was also speaking about the vanishing cultures, endangered languages and the vanishing cultures. Is not it? So as we understand languages of the indigenous people are found to be evaporating before our eyes. Is not it? If we do not make proper documentation, and if we do not make proper record of the ways of life of the indigenous people, the ways of life of many of the indigenous people will evaporate before our eyes. They will vanish forever. So digital techniques or AI techniques can be used in the documentation and the digitization of the indigenous knowledge. It's not it. Is to the natural processing language is a what? AI enabled F, through which we can make documentation of the vanished languages or endangered languages. By means of which we can what? Make documentation of the different cultural items, and we can teach what? Language. So in that presentation, that learned teacher also mentioned that language of some of the indigenous peoples of Manipur are found to be losing because of the adoption of the foreign words. So in anthropology, while you are studying acculturation, there are the two forms of borrowing. Acculturation can be discussed under two forms. One is the core borrowing, and another one is the cultural borrowing. We should not practice cultural borrowing. Being teachers of the anthropologists, being students of the anthropologists, you should ask or you should suggest the indigenous people not to practice cultural borrowing, not to practice core borrowing. What do we mean by core borrowing? For example, in my family, my youngsters, particularly Graham Sindrel, do not know what do he mean by Shaben or 60. Kumputarek. He or she does not know what do mean by 67. When I say Kumputarek, then he told me or she told me, what do you mean by 67? Kumputarek. When I say 67, he or she knows. It is language invasion. We have our own language, Kumputarek, but rather than using Kumputarek, we prefer to use 67. It is an example of core borrowing. Because of the core borrowing, many of the indigenous languages have become endangered. Cultural borrowing should be there. Because we don't invent. Culture is not simply a heritage. Culture includes invention also. We don't invent what? We don't invent aeroplane. So we don't have words for aeroplane. So in that sense, we can borrow aeroplane. So it is known as cultural borrowing. If you go to America, so what? In case of dance, they don't understand. We are very much superior to them in case of in the context of art. So they adopted what? They adopted this Sampradaya dance. So Kuzen Levi dance. So Sampradaya dance is doing like this. So they adopted the word Sampradaya. They don't translate it because it is not possible to translate it. So when we are doing like this, they have adopted this Kuzen Levi dance. So they have borrowed from us also. So as a student of anthropology, you know many things about mana is not an anglicized word. It has been adopted, they do itself. So in such a way, Englishmen are also doing cultural borrowing, but they never practice core borrowing. But in case of the third world countries, particularly in Africa and Asia, core borrowing has been practiced rampantly. Because of the rampant practice of this core borrowing, our language and our culture is found to be vanished. So in this way, what I like to suggest in connection with the theme of the UN, we must use the benefit of the artificial intelligence in the digitization, in the documentation of the cultural languages of the culture and the languages of the indigenous people. If we do use the benefit of the AI in the digitization and the documentation of the culture and the ways of life of the indigenous people, then we will be able to shape our future. The second domain, with this second domain, let me close. So, second domain is this. Nowadays, we are very much speaking about I also have spoken about the knowledge sovereignty or data sovereignty. Here, let me remind you one of the contributions made by one famous anthropologist. So, in ecological anthropology, you might have heard the name of Roy A. Rappaport. You might have heard the name of Roy A. Rappaport. He is an ecological anthropologist. What he is doing? Today, global warming, climate change has become a global phenomenon. So, to overcome these dangerous phenomenon of climate change and global warming, science has invented a number of models. Is not it? Today we are very much speaking about the conservation and the preservation. And we think that this conservation and the preservation are the inventions of the science. But if you go through the knowledge domain of the indigenous people, they have their own concept of conservation and the preservation. These are not the inventions of the environmental science. These are not the inventions of the climate scientists. So, in such a way, Roy A. Rappaport has postulated two concepts. One is the operational model, and the second one is the cognitive model. The operational model is invented by science. Rappaport is of the opinion that using the operational model provided by science, we will not be able to overcome the challenges of the climate change. Indigenous people have their own model of fighting this climate change. That model is called cognitive model by Roy A. Rappaport. So Roy A. Rappaport has suggested that there should be a blending of both the cognitive model and the operational model. By blending these two models, operational model and the cognitive model, then we will be able to fight the challenges of climate change successfully. It has been recognized all over the world. Here, some years back also, Science and the Technology organized a seminar. There also, I have presented this view of the Roy A. Rappaport, and many of the climate scientists and physicists and chemists coming from other parts of the country happily accepted that one. And it has been accepted at the international level. So even nowadays, at the UN level, simply adopting the operational model will not be able to fight or to overcome the challenges of climate change. Therefore, it is very much necessary to keep our cultural heritage as well as to keep our knowledge sovereignty. So, one of the important things that AI can do is the documentation and the digitization of our traditional or indigenous knowledge. If we can share or if we can give some light in fighting the challenges of the climate change, then importance of the indigenous knowledge will be recognized all over the world. So this is the second domain. Third domain is what? That we should raise our voice. If we do not raise Particularly, if the indigenous people do not raise their voice, who will raise their voice? They themselves have to raise the voice of the indigenous people. Therefore, in this way, by raising the voice of the indigenous people, what? We can check the future rights of the indigenous people. Here, the discipline or the field of inquiry of anthropology can play a vital role, because anthropology is very much attached academically, emotionally to the indigenous people. So we should be the speakers of the indigenous people. Anthropologists should be the speakers of the indigenous people. So in such a way, anthropology can play a vital role in defending the rights of the indigenous people and in shaping the future of the indigenous people. So what I like to share with you all is that in science itself, Kun is of the opinion that if you happen to go through the philosophy of science, Kun is always speaking about the paradigm shift. So at present, there is the need of the paradigm shift. There is a need of the paradigm shift. That means the paradigm at one time is very much with the European knowledge, European epistemology, European philosophy. Today, by raising the voice of the indigenous people, we should try to incorporate indigenous paradigm with the Western paradigm. At one time, it was known as the paradigm war. So there is a book called Paradigm War. If you happen to go through that book, Paradigm War, you will find thousands of examples of the biocolonialism. So in such a way, UN is of the opinion that there should be a paradigm shift today. Because of that understanding, they have coined the term indigenous peoples and artificial intelligence, defending rights and shaping futures. With these few words, I shall coin my speech. Thank you very much for your presence.
Thank you so much, sir. Respected Professor W. Nabakumar Singh, former Dean, School of Human and Environmental Sciences, Manipur University, for sharing your insightful knowledge and views regarding the indigenous people and AI, defending rights, shaping futures, highlighting more on the philosophy of the term indigenous and how it is perceived in various regions in the world, and interesting stories of hunter and gatherers, and elaborating the term biocolonialism and the misrepresentation and disrepresentation. Thank you so much, sir. Before we move on to the further program, let's welcome the chief guest of this event. May I now request to call upon the stage respected Sir Sri Mujwa Bahadur, Director, Mujwa Museum, Imphal, to kindly take the chair on the dais as the chief guest on this function. Sir Mujwa Bahadur Kidamakda Lengyang Fi Amadi Badge Happy Ranaba Goshanjari. Thank you so much. Pangthokjariba Thoramasi, Akhoi Iramdam asida khunda leitaduna leminizariba tongan-tonganba kangduk kaya sigi yelhomi habadi indigenous people singbu celebrate tawjabani. ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯕꯨ ꯃꯥꯂꯦꯝꯒꯤ ꯊꯥꯛꯇ ꯁꯛ ꯇꯥꯛꯄ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯁꯦꯠꯆꯔꯤꯕ ꯐꯤꯖꯦꯠ ꯂꯩꯇꯦꯡ ꯑꯁꯤꯅꯁꯨ ꯑꯆꯧꯕ ꯐꯤꯗꯥ ꯑꯃ ꯀꯟꯕꯤꯔꯤꯕꯅꯤ. So one's traditional attire holds a very deep meaning in showcasing our identity. ꯑꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯂꯕ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟ-ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯀꯥꯡꯂꯨꯞ ꯀꯌꯥꯒꯤ ꯅꯥꯠꯀꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯐꯤꯖꯦꯠ ꯂꯩꯇꯦꯡ ꯀꯌꯥ ꯃꯤꯌꯥꯝꯒꯤ ꯃꯥꯡꯗ ꯎꯠꯊꯣꯛꯆꯅꯕꯒꯤꯗꯃꯛ ꯁꯦꯝ ꯁꯥꯕ ꯂꯣꯏꯖꯔꯦ. So presenting you in our next program a cultural show portraying the indigenous culture of Manipur. So let's encourage all the participants who are going to represent the various communities in Manipur. Let's first encourage the first participant of this performance. For the participants are representing the Manao community of Manipur. Coming up, the next performer is representing the Chiru community of Manipur. May we all have a huge round of applause. Coming up, the next participant, they are representing the Chothe community of Manipur. May we all have a huge round of applause for this beautiful attire. Coming up, the next performer is representing the Kong community of Manipur. Can we have a huge round of applause? Coming up, your beautiful participants is representing Mao community of Manipur. Can we have a huge round of applause for this beautiful, beautiful attire? Coming up is the participant representing the Waring community of Manipur. Coming up, the next participant, your participant representing the Meitei community of Manipur. Can we have a huge round of applause? All of you are looking so attractive and beautiful. of Manipur. Can we have a huge round of applause for them? Thanks to all the participants for this one-of-a-kind portrayal of the traditional attire representing almost all the communities in Manipur. You all are giving us a chance to witness our rich traditional attire under a frame. Thank you so much. So we...
Hello. Anthropology department.
Respected Dr. Okram Kumar Singh, former principal, DM College of Commerce, to kindly share some few words. Respected sir is the guest of honor of this event. Sir, please kindly share some ideas regarding this event. Can we have a huge round of applause for the respected sir?
In School of Humanities and Environmental University. Professor PhD Wilson, Dean School of Humanities and Environment Science, and Principal of the College of Science, DMU University. However, he is not there. Professor K. Ravikant Singh, Dean, Students Welfare and Head of Department of Anthropology. Department of Anthropology, Dhanamanjuri University. And all the faculty members of the Anthropology Department, invitees, and students, board members. I'm afraid really to say what, because Professor W. Singh have already explained and expressed so extensively, so intensively, nothing has been left, I think. So I am afraid to say what, I don't know now what to say. Anyway, today is a day celebrating for the welfare of the indigenous people of the world. And also in Manipur, the Department of Anthropology, the College of Science, and also Dhanamanjuri University have organized this one, and I'm also really much thankful to the organizer to invite me as a guest of honor of this function. I'm really, of course, my knowledge on this indigenous people of the world is very poor, no doubt. But I must say that the estimated indigenous people in the world is 476 million. Not, of course, very small. And they are living in 90 countries of the world. They have spoken majority of the languages, about 7,000 in the world. And our resource person today have already expressed the extinction of some of the languages. Really speaking, it is reported that 40% of the 70,000 languages of the world are becoming endangered. In that, we have seen already at the beginning of this function, some of the languages in Manipur, say for example, Pugul, Tarao, Aino, Manipur, and also Koibu. Their number is very small and likely to be, I don't say extinct, but it becomes endangered. Endangering of these languages, it is reported that it is because of the unuse of the languages in the academic field. So, in the NEP 2020, it is encouraging to study the academic in the mother tongue. So in that aspect, we should encourage the teaching program in their own languages so that we can save these endangered languages. Then also, there are varieties of cultures, more than 5,000 cultures are existing in this world. And their cultures have also, of course, mostly depend or based on the environmental settings. And culture, as we know, as a student of anthropology, it is always in the process of change. It can never be checked. Changing of the culture, it is a normal process. Normal process, why? Our culture is always related with the environment where human beings live or exist. The activities of man, the culture, whenever there is no room for adjustment to the environment, it will definitely extinct. The vivid example I would say, as a student of anthropology, you know that in the prehistoric time, we are studying a culture that is called the Stone Age culture. Do you see now this culture? No, we have not seen it. It has already changed and becomes extinct also. This is because the utility of the culture or the fitness to the adjustment of the environment is not there. As long as there is a suitability for adjustment to the environment where human beings live, then it will continue. And in the last, at the beginning, we have seen that pottery is a handicraft and is also dying now. Pottery making in Manipur is as old as 4,460 years before present, say around 5,000 years before. Since then, the tradition is continuing. Among the Wainam village, we find the using of the same technology, almost the same technology, and also the decoration pattern of that time, 5,000 years old pottery decoration pattern is also still continuing there. This is because it fits in their living, in their culture, in their environment. However, now, at present, the reason of becoming extinct is economically it does not, or it is not viable. So economy is a very important factor for the survival of the people. And we understand in the study of the anthropology that every society has three important social organizations. One is the economic organization for livelihood, social organization for the unification of the member of the society, and political organization for the diplomatic relation within the society as well as outside the society. So these three organizations is always associated with this human culture. And the activities performed for the economy of the people, when it does not suitable to their survival, then automatically it will die. That is why now pottery has been replaced by the metals utensils, so naturally it will die. Now, the one way of becoming extinct of the culture or the society is the absorption and the assimilation process. It is very fast now. And Professor Nabucco has already said, when we borrow, the core borrowing in his time, core borrowing is going on, then it is a root cause of becoming extinct of the society or the culture. We should all the time to be aware of such practices. And another thing, while talking this, I have not said this. Nabucco also have stated that the definition of the indigenous people is difficult to, a single definition for the indigenous people is not existed till now. And the word, this indigenous, has been, of course, derived from the Latin words indigo, meaning spring from the land or the Latin. For this, I failed to have a glimpse of the archaeological findings, so that to identify who are the original inhabitants. So in the context of Manipur, we know that our area has been populated since the prehistoric Stone Age. And their cultural practices, of course, they are comparable with the culture of Southeast Asia and East Asia. And even though we don't get any fossil remains of human fossil remains, that by considering the cultural similarities, we can postulate two possible human groups. One is the Australoid, another is the Mongol. So these two populations might have existed during the prehistoric Stone Age. Now, point is, it is the responsibility of anthropology to examine whether these two populations have their descendant or it continued till today or not. Now in our material, in our language, there are certain physical characters explanation that is called, say, Nakang techno. That is the fossil prognathus. So this very word, Nakang techno, is included in our language. That means this is a continuation of the feature of those prehistoric stories. And also, some koiva, curly head here. This is very much a term existing, continuing till present. So therefore, there is sign of the continuity of the prehistoric people till today. The physical character till today. This is the physical character of the Australian people. So this Australian people's character is which we are observing is present in the present day population of the state. Similarly also, everybody will say we are dominating Mongolian population. And this also, physical character also, it is there. And therefore, from the archaeological study, there is an indication or tradition that we have been originated since the Stone Age. And those one day, the linguists have said that during the Neolithic time, a group of Western Tibeto-Burman group have migrated from Sichuan and introduced Neolithic culture in Northeast India. This fact is also can confirm with a similar culture prevailed in the state. For example, the tripod-ware culture of the Neolithic culture of Manipur, which is prevalent in the archaeological sites. It was originated from China and it spread towards the Southeast Asia, Thailand, and also towards our state. So this is an indication of the migration of the Mongolian people also. So now, to understand who are the indigenous people of this state particularly, we ought to have studied archaeology as well as the anthropology. Along with that, we need to understand the linguistic science or language prevalent in this area. would like to conclude also by saying that we are facing a conflict in our state. What caused this? What happened with this? This is, we understand, everyone knows that it is because of the illegal migration of the population from some other countries. So until we we control such illegal migration, the indigenous people will become a minority and there will be a threat in their survival. Therefore, as a theme of today's function, the problem, how to solve the problem. So this is also one of the problems that we should take. And with this few words, I would like to conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Respected guest of honor of this event, Sir Dr. Okram Kumar Singh, former Principal, DM College of Commerce, for sharing your views on indigenous people. Thoroughly Marathatna. Let's welcome the Vice Chancellor of Dhanamanjuri University, respected Professor W. Chan Babu, to kindly call upon the stage to take the chair on the dais as the guest of honor of this event. Respected Shargi, Lengan P. Amadi Bech, Puviratnaba, Dhanamanjuri. Lengan P. Amadi Bech, Kudol Dhanamanjuri. Now, let's move on to the next program. May I now request to call upon the stage respected Sir Professor W. Chan Babu, Vice Chancellor of Dhanamanjuri University, to kindly share some words with us all, sir. May we have a huge round of applause for our respected sir.
Thank you. I'm extremely sorry today because morning I was engaged in another program. Just because of that, I was supposed to attend this program but somehow could not come for this program. On the stage, we have with us our distinguished dignitaries, Professor W. Kumar Singh, former Dean School of Human and Environmental Sciences, Manipur University, and resource person of this program, Sir Mutu Bahadur, chief guest of the program, and guest of honor, Sir Kumar, the former principal of DM College of Commerce and president of this program, Sir Ravikanta of Department of Anthropology and the Dean of Students Welfare, Dhanamanjuri University, learned invitees, faculty members, and students and scholars. Today we are celebrating this International Day of World's Indigenous People 2025. And I believe all of our friends and other invitees might have discussed very thoroughly all about what is there on this perspective indigenous people and how AI will be useful for protecting the indigenous people's rights and also shaping future of the indigenous people by using this AI. I will not dwell too much on these areas because this is not that much as per my knowledge and the field of research. But still, I just would like to say a few words in this connection. I usually indigenous people and indigenous values and indigenous culture and its practices. Kasi no gisum mangsil lakpase ko na music adum thengna duna lay. Kasi mangsil lakpagi maram mayam si asuki batik yamongani adu among those factors mangsil lakpagi maram mayam si manungda factor amadi apagi economic perspectives and economic issues. Sisini haina ay khali. Na apagi traditional practices mayam si apagi sigi market si sum musin give mutalak. Adu apagi strong culture mayam si na weak culture mayam si yosin give us asigi asawa mami ama prithvi ko chumada tai haina adu khali Manipur da sumasi adu chumgane na khali. Strong cultures in China, weak cultures in Yosan Gidra. Strong cultures in China, we law and adapt toxin Gidra. Hoy apikpa culture, apikpa hoy ideas mayamsi. As much valuable oiragasu. Ethical standards yamna prominent oiragasu. Sum madu conserve to preserve to ngamakta. Adu preserve to una buhana bata adu economical oirakta ba society sta madugi adum perspectives ma ko yam na naina ba zungani hainai hanbada khali osi Manipur da su akoi gi hana yari ba naijaba culture ma'am si loina ba koina mudki badawna toropas kogi starting from our lai harau bagi adagi apagi tongan ba apik community mayam si ma ethical standard ethical practice mayam si loi na sum mangsil lai bagi maram si adugi traditional tu culture da lairamba sindaraba items si market si nation laktaba aduga aikoina ano ba ideas ano ba culture sida khatang hena stronger oiba culture sida kaitang prominent oiba market chawba culture sing dai koji sum lupsin gidna akoi gi ariba culture traditional practices and ethical standard values norms mayam si loina mo muthatak pagi kaino ma hoji changchilak pase koina ui hoji madugi perspective mayam si yewra khan dai koina hoji ano education policy 2020 da high si akoi gi traditional knowledge Indian knowledge system traditional knowledge mayam ko groom tawraga madugi mayam to amu revive tawba madugi mayam do amu aikoi kanbagi line sida koina changchil lakpasigi iroina aikoi su ji Manipur da laidiba akoi si indigenous practices indigenous knowledge traditional values mayam ji kramai to koi revive tawsige madugi mayam do groom tawdana protect tawdana thamna bagi whole process of the artificial intelligence and the technology si kamai use tawsige habasi yamna ningai oiba matam mama ni hujise Atau si comment of Indian knowledge system, amasung si traditional practices mayam sida important speeding ay matam timing sida aikoi na so aikoi ki indigenous practices aikoi ki ethical standard values adigi deeply rooted say bondings and aikoi ki kahetare yam significant oiba tamjaningai oiba practices and the methods mayam si aikoi karamain tawdana mo hingal hangani madugi damta aikoi ki academic institutions in the karamaina masigi roles play tawbani civil society organizations singda karamaina asigi initiative ama lawrakani ato society da leiba kogi sahi yamaba ariba matamgi ideas adigi knowledge mayam si matugi moigi brains da leiba mayam si akoina madu karamaina tawdana adugi akogi ideas mayam si lawthu hogani madugi narrations mayam stories mayam si folk ideas mayam si akoina Kamai to record tahubani ka haibasi koina yama chaw initiative ama hoji academic institutions in lead tawga work tawbugi matam si yamna thengmalabani adu maramdi kaina to hoji sahi marfu gi mathakki kanagi akogi laiba society laiba senior citizen mayam se makhoi sida lairam baduriba knowledge gi masagi pukkai se masi ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯅ ꯇꯥꯏꯕꯪꯄꯥꯟꯁꯤ ꯊꯥꯗꯣꯛꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯉꯩꯗ ꯀꯔꯝꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯗꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯂꯧꯍꯧꯒꯅꯤ ꯃꯣꯏꯁꯤꯡꯗꯒꯤ ꯀꯔꯤ ꯀꯔꯤ ꯇꯝꯖꯅꯤꯡꯉꯥꯏ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯋꯥꯔꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗꯒꯤ ꯃꯣꯏꯗꯒꯤ ꯀꯂꯦꯛꯁꯟ ꯇꯧꯍꯧꯒꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯗꯤꯁ ꯏꯁ ꯑꯦ ꯚꯦꯔꯤ ꯒꯨꯗ ꯔꯤꯁꯔꯁ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯏꯖꯨꯀꯦꯁꯟ ꯏꯟꯁꯇꯤꯇ꯭ꯌꯨꯁꯟꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯗ ꯃꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯟꯗꯨꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯆꯪꯁꯤꯜꯂꯛꯄꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯗꯔꯀꯥꯔ ꯂꯩ ꯙꯔꯃꯦꯟꯗ꯭ꯔ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤꯗꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯗꯤꯄꯥꯔꯠꯃꯦꯟ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯑꯦꯟꯊ꯭ꯔꯣꯄꯣꯂꯣꯖꯤꯅ ꯂꯤꯗ ꯇꯧꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯃꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯐꯤꯜꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯗꯨꯝ ꯑꯩ ꯋꯥꯛ ꯇꯧꯍꯟꯅꯤꯡꯉꯤ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯆꯥꯎꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯔꯤꯁꯔꯁ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯖꯦꯛ ꯑꯃ ꯄꯥꯏꯈꯠꯂꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯅꯦꯔꯦꯇꯤꯚꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯐꯣꯛ ꯂꯤꯇꯔꯦꯠ ꯐꯣꯛ ꯑꯦꯟ ꯑꯃꯁꯨꯡ ꯀꯜꯆꯔꯒ ꯃꯔꯤ ꯂꯩꯅꯕ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯋꯥꯔꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯔꯦꯀꯣꯔꯠ ꯇꯧꯍꯧꯕ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗꯣ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯏꯊꯣꯛꯄ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯗꯣꯀꯨꯃꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟ ꯇꯧꯍꯧꯕꯒꯤ ꯄꯔꯁꯄꯦꯛꯇꯤꯚꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯄꯨꯁꯤꯜꯂꯛꯄꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯗꯔꯀꯥꯔ ꯂꯩꯒꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯗꯨꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗꯣ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯇꯦꯛꯁ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯣꯟꯊꯣꯛꯑꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯅꯦꯔꯦꯇꯤꯚꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗꯣ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯇꯦꯛꯁ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯣꯟꯊꯣꯛꯑꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯏꯖꯨꯀꯦꯁꯅꯦꯜ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯀꯨꯂꯝꯁꯤꯗ ꯀꯔꯝꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯗꯅ ꯄꯨꯁꯤꯜꯂꯛꯀꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯗꯔꯀꯥꯔ ꯂꯩ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅꯗꯤ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁ ꯅꯣꯂꯦꯖ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯇꯝꯕꯤꯒꯗꯧꯕꯅꯤ ꯈꯣꯠꯀꯗꯧꯕꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯒꯤ ꯋꯥꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜꯁꯇ ꯑꯃꯁꯨꯡ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤꯁꯇ ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯒ ꯀꯣꯂꯦꯖꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯇꯝꯕꯤꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯂꯤꯇꯔꯦꯆꯔꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯁꯐꯤꯁꯤꯌꯦꯟꯠꯂꯤ ꯂꯩꯇ꯭ꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯀꯔꯝꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯀꯣꯔꯁꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯏꯟꯇ꯭ꯔꯣꯗ꯭ꯌꯨꯁ ꯇꯧꯒꯗꯧꯔꯤꯒꯦꯕꯣ ꯁꯤꯁꯨ ꯑꯅꯧꯕ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯂꯨꯕ ꯆꯦꯂꯦꯟꯖ ꯑꯃꯅꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯂꯤꯇꯔꯦꯆꯔꯗꯨ ꯂꯩꯇ꯭ꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯀꯔꯝꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯗꯅ ꯇꯝꯕꯤꯒꯗꯧꯔꯤ ꯀꯔꯝꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯗꯅ ꯏꯚꯦꯂꯨꯌꯦꯁꯟ ꯇꯧꯅꯤ ꯑꯦꯁꯦꯁꯃꯦꯟ ꯇꯧꯅꯤ ꯀ꯭ꯋꯦꯁꯟ ꯀꯔꯝꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯁꯦꯝꯒꯗꯧꯔꯤꯅꯤ ꯑꯉꯥꯡꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯆꯥꯛ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯀꯔꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯄꯤꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯐꯨꯜ ꯐ꯭ꯂꯦꯖ 3 ꯀ꯭ꯔꯦꯗꯤꯠꯀꯤ 2 ꯀ꯭ꯔꯦꯗꯤꯠꯀꯤ ꯀꯣꯔꯁꯇꯣ ꯑꯣꯟꯊꯣꯛꯀꯗꯣꯏꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯦ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯝ ꯑꯣꯄꯔꯦꯁꯅꯦꯜ ꯆꯦꯂꯦꯟꯖꯦꯁ ꯏꯝꯄ꯭ꯂꯤꯃꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟ ꯆꯦꯂꯦꯟꯖꯦꯁ ꯑꯗꯨꯝ ꯂꯩꯌꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯏꯝꯄ꯭ꯂꯤꯃꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟ ꯆꯦꯂꯦꯟꯖꯦꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯔꯤꯃꯨꯚ ꯇꯧꯅꯕꯒꯤꯗꯃꯛꯇ ꯑꯍꯟ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯗꯒꯤ ꯁꯤꯅꯤꯌꯔ ꯄꯤꯄꯜ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯗꯒꯤ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯅꯦꯔꯦꯇꯤꯚꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯈꯣꯝꯒꯠꯄ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯁꯤ ꯔꯦꯀꯣꯔꯠ ꯇꯧꯍꯧꯕ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯔꯤꯛꯇ ꯑꯣꯟꯊꯣꯛꯄ ꯑꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯏꯝꯄꯣꯔꯇꯦꯟꯁꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯒꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯀꯔꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯏꯖꯨꯀꯦꯁꯅꯦꯜ ꯏꯟꯁꯇꯤꯇ꯭ꯌꯨꯁꯟꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯗ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯂꯧꯈꯠꯇꯕ ꯌꯥꯗꯕ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯥꯏꯑꯣꯔꯤꯇꯤ ꯑꯃꯅꯦꯕ ꯁꯤ ꯑꯗ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯁꯤꯗ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯀꯤ ꯅꯦꯔꯦꯇꯤꯚꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯔꯦꯀꯣꯔꯠ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯃꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗꯨ ꯏꯪꯂꯤꯁꯇ ꯍꯟꯗꯣꯛꯍꯟꯕ ꯑꯣꯟꯊꯣꯛꯍꯟꯕ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯕ꯭ꯂꯦꯛ ꯑꯦꯟ ꯋꯥꯏꯠꯇ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯞꯁꯤꯡꯗ ꯕꯪꯒꯥꯂꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯞꯁꯤꯡꯗ ꯏꯊꯣꯛꯄ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯏꯊꯣꯛꯑꯒ ꯕꯪꯒꯥꯂꯤꯁꯤꯗ ꯏꯊꯣꯛꯇꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯅꯣ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯒꯤ ꯉꯁꯤꯗꯒꯤꯅ ꯆꯍꯤ 10ꯒꯤ ꯃꯃꯥꯡꯗ 10ꯒꯤ ꯃꯃꯥꯡꯗ ꯂꯥꯏꯔꯤꯛ ꯇꯝꯈꯤꯕ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗꯨꯗꯤ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯃꯛ ꯕꯪꯒꯥꯂꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯞꯇ ꯇꯝꯕꯅꯤ나 ꯃꯣꯏ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗꯤ ꯀꯔꯝꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯄꯥꯒꯗꯧꯔꯤꯒꯦꯕ ꯃꯣꯏ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯔꯤꯖꯤꯅꯦꯜ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯞꯁꯦ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯇꯝꯕꯤꯅꯕ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯕꯗ it is an effort unnecessary effort ꯑꯃꯅꯦꯕꯁꯦ ꯑꯆꯧꯕ effort ꯑꯃꯅꯦꯕꯁꯦ is very costly exercise ꯃꯗꯨꯗ involve ꯇꯧꯒꯗꯧꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯦꯟ ꯄꯥꯋꯔ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯇꯦꯛꯅꯣꯂꯣꯖꯤ effort ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯑꯔꯥꯏꯕ ꯅꯠꯇꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯕꯪꯒꯥꯂꯤ as well as ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯑꯣꯔꯤꯖꯤꯅꯦꯜ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯞꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯏꯊꯣꯛꯑꯒ ꯅꯝꯊꯣꯛꯑꯒ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯕ꯭ꯔꯦꯔꯤꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯗ ꯊꯝꯕ ꯈꯣꯠꯄ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯁꯥꯊꯤꯅ ꯗꯔꯀꯥꯔ ꯂꯩ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯇꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯙꯔꯃꯟꯖꯨꯔꯤ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤꯒꯤ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯁꯦꯟꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯜ ꯂꯥꯏꯕ꯭ꯔꯦꯔꯤ ꯑꯃ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯏꯁꯇꯥꯕ꯭ꯂꯤꯁ ꯇꯧꯔꯛꯏꯁꯤꯗ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯥꯔꯀꯥꯏꯚꯦꯜ ꯁꯦꯛꯁꯟ ꯑꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕꯒꯤ ꯗꯣꯀꯨꯃꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟꯒꯤ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯒꯤ ꯀꯝꯄ꯭ꯂꯤꯠ ꯂꯤꯒꯦꯜ ꯍꯤꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯂꯥꯏꯕ꯭ꯔꯦꯔꯤ ꯑꯃ ꯁꯥꯒꯠꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯂꯥꯟ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯂꯩꯔꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯕ꯭ꯔꯦꯔꯤꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯁꯦꯟꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯜ ꯂꯥꯏꯕ꯭ꯔꯦꯔꯤ ꯙꯅꯃꯟꯖꯨꯔꯤ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤ ꯁꯥꯒꯠꯀꯗꯧꯔꯤꯁꯤꯗ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯁꯦꯛꯁꯟ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯈꯥꯏꯗꯣꯛꯑꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯕꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯜꯔꯦꯗꯤ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯂꯥꯟꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯠꯂꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯤꯅꯤꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯗ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯆꯧ ꯑꯆꯧꯕ ꯕꯤꯖꯤꯅꯦꯁ ꯍꯥꯎꯁꯦꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗ ꯁꯤ ꯃꯣꯏꯒꯤ CSR ꯐꯟꯗꯒꯤ ꯙꯅꯃꯟꯖꯨꯔꯤ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤꯁꯤ ꯐꯨꯜ ꯐ꯭ꯂꯦꯖ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯦꯠꯀꯤ ꯈ꯭ꯋꯥꯏꯗꯒꯤ ꯐꯕ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤ ꯑꯃꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯕ꯭ꯔꯦꯔꯤꯒꯤ ꯊꯥꯛꯇ ꯄꯨꯈꯠꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯁꯦꯝꯒꯠꯂꯤꯕꯁꯤ ꯑꯁꯤꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯔꯤꯌꯦꯂꯥꯏꯁ ꯇꯧꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁ ꯅꯣꯂꯦꯖ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯊꯝꯐꯝ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯀꯂꯦꯛꯁꯟ ꯇꯧꯐꯝ ꯑꯆꯧꯕ ꯔꯤꯄꯣꯖꯤꯇꯔꯤ ꯄꯨꯀꯩ ꯑꯃ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯛꯀꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯑꯩ ꯃꯪꯉꯤꯕꯅꯤ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯨ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯟꯗ ꯑꯗꯨꯝ ꯁꯣꯏꯗꯅ ꯁꯄꯣꯔꯠ ꯇꯧꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯔꯦꯗꯤꯗ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯂꯩꯔꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯁꯦꯛꯁꯟ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯑꯃꯗ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯇꯞꯅ ꯇꯞꯅ ꯋꯥꯔꯤ ꯁꯥꯔꯒ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯑꯥꯏꯗꯤꯌꯥ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯁꯦꯝꯒꯠꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯀꯟꯅ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤꯗ ꯋꯥꯛ ꯇꯧꯔꯤ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯁꯦ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁ ꯄꯤꯄꯜ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁ ꯅꯣꯂꯦꯖ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁ ꯀꯜꯆꯔ ꯑꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯗꯣꯀꯨꯃꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟ ꯃꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯑꯥꯏꯗꯤꯌꯥꯁ ꯚꯦꯂ꯭ꯌꯨꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯃꯛ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤꯁꯤꯗ ꯄꯨꯁꯜꯂꯛꯑꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤꯁꯤꯅ ꯁꯦꯟꯇꯔ ꯐꯣꯔ ꯗꯤꯁꯤꯃꯤनेटिंग all this information, center for disseminating all these ideas to the masses. And at the same time, how this can be, say communicated world across about the value system, ethical standard of the traditional knowledge and the practices of a Manipuri society have been a university platform the work the all about the and ngasi gi sigumba International Day of World's Indigenous Peoples 2025 ꯒꯤ ꯊꯤꯝꯁꯤꯗ Indigenous People and AI Defending Rights Shaping Futures ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯊꯤꯝꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ Department of Anthropology ꯅ Dhanamanjuri University ꯅ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯒ꯭ꯔꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯁꯤꯟꯗꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ intellectual ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯑꯁꯤꯗ ꯄꯣꯔꯛꯄ new ideas ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯑꯃ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯅꯧ ꯑꯅꯧꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯈꯪꯗ꯭ꯔꯕ ꯎꯗ꯭ꯔꯕ information ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯑꯃ ꯉꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯄ꯭ꯂꯦꯠꯐꯣꯝꯁꯤꯗ ꯁꯤꯌꯔ ꯇꯧꯕꯤꯔꯝꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯔꯤꯄꯣꯔꯠ ꯑꯃ ꯁꯥꯒꯠꯇꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤꯗ ꯗꯣꯀꯨꯃꯦꯟ ꯇꯧꯍꯧꯕ ꯑꯃꯁꯨꯡ ꯁꯣꯁꯥꯏꯇꯤꯗ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯄꯥꯎꯁꯤ ꯌꯧꯍꯟꯕ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯊꯧꯗꯥꯡ ꯑꯃ ꯂꯧꯈꯠꯄꯤꯔꯤꯕꯁꯤꯒꯤꯗꯃꯛꯇ ꯑꯩ Department of Anthropology especially to our Dean Students Welfare ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯔꯕꯤꯀꯥꯟꯇꯕꯨ ꯍꯪꯅ ꯊꯥꯒꯠꯆꯔꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯇꯤꯟꯕꯤꯔꯤꯕꯁꯦ ꯂꯥꯛꯄꯤꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯄꯨꯝꯅꯃꯛꯁꯨ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯒ꯭ꯔꯥꯝꯁꯤꯗ ꯌꯥꯎꯕꯤꯕꯒꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯃꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯥꯏꯗꯤꯌꯥꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯦꯛꯁꯄ꯭ꯔꯦꯁ ꯇꯧꯕꯤꯔꯝꯗꯅ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤꯒꯤ ꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯔꯤꯄꯣꯔꯠ ꯑꯃ ꯁꯦꯝꯒꯠꯄꯗ ꯃꯇꯦꯡ ꯄꯥꯡꯕꯤꯕꯒꯤꯗꯃꯛ ꯑꯔꯣꯏꯕ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯊꯥꯒꯠꯆꯔꯤ ꯊꯦꯡꯛ ꯌꯨ
Thakachari sir, ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯥꯡꯊꯔꯛꯂꯤꯕ indigenous knowledge ꯒꯤ ꯃꯔꯝꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤ ꯒꯤ ꯆꯥꯎꯈꯠ ꯊꯧꯔꯥꯡ ꯀꯌꯥ ꯁꯨꯒꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯥꯛꯄꯤꯔꯝꯕꯒꯤꯗꯃꯛ ꯑꯃꯨꯛꯀ ꯍꯟꯅ ꯁꯔꯕꯨ ꯉꯝꯈꯩ ꯂꯩꯇꯅ ꯊꯥꯒꯠꯄ ꯐꯣꯡꯗꯣꯛꯆꯔꯤ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯅ ꯇꯤꯟꯕꯤꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯄꯨꯝꯅꯃꯛꯅ ꯈꯪꯕꯤꯒꯗꯕꯗꯤ ꯅꯨꯡꯉꯥꯏꯔꯕ cultural performance ꯀꯌꯥ ꯁꯤꯟꯖ ꯂꯥꯡꯖꯗꯨꯅ ꯊꯧꯔꯥꯡ ꯇꯧꯖꯔꯒ ꯊꯝꯖꯔꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯂꯦꯡꯗꯅ ꯊꯧꯔꯝ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯂꯣꯏꯕ ꯐꯥꯎꯕ ꯁꯔꯨꯛ ꯌꯥꯅꯕ ꯍꯥꯏꯖꯔꯤ Moving on to the next program, may I request respected chief guest of this event, respected Sir Sri Mutua Bahadur, Director, Mutua Museum, Imphal, to kindly share some ideas regarding this event. Can we have a huge round of applause for the respected Sir?
ꯑꯩ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗ ꯃꯇꯝ ꯆꯥꯅ ꯂꯥꯛꯈꯤꯗꯕ ꯉꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯊꯧꯔꯝ ꯑꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯇꯝ ꯆꯥꯅ ꯂꯥꯛꯈꯤꯗꯕ ꯉꯟꯈꯤꯗꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯔꯝꯗꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯖꯕ ꯇꯥꯔꯕꯗ ꯉꯁꯤꯁꯤ ꯋꯥꯔꯜ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁ ꯗꯦ ꯑꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯆꯤꯡꯗꯒꯤ ꯀꯥꯔꯛꯄ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ MFDC ꯍꯣꯜꯗ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯃꯇꯝ ꯆꯥꯅ ꯂꯥꯛꯇꯕ ꯄꯨꯡ 8:30 ꯂꯥꯛꯀꯗꯧꯕꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯊꯦꯡꯊꯔꯛ ꯑꯩꯁꯨ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯐꯪꯁꯟꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯋꯥ ꯉꯥꯡꯕ ꯑꯣꯏꯒꯗꯧꯕ ꯏꯇꯣꯝꯇ ꯉꯥꯡꯒꯗꯧꯕ ꯋꯥꯁꯦ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯨ ꯉꯥꯏꯕꯗ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯊꯦꯡꯊꯔꯛ ꯑꯗꯩ ꯑꯩꯁꯤ ꯇꯧꯐꯝ ꯈꯪꯗꯅ ꯁꯣꯝꯗ ꯆꯠꯅꯤꯡꯕꯅ ꯂꯣꯏꯔꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯗ ꯃꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗꯨ ꯆꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯡꯗꯨ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯖꯒꯣꯏ ꯏꯁꯩꯁꯨ ꯂꯣꯏ ꯄꯨꯂꯞ ꯂꯥꯛꯄꯅꯤꯅ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯉꯥꯡꯗ꯭ꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯅꯨꯡꯉꯥꯏꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯅ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯐꯝꯕꯗꯒꯤꯗꯤ ꯎꯆꯤꯟ ꯅꯥꯆꯤꯟꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯅ꯭ꯌꯨꯁ ꯑꯃꯈꯛ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯦꯒꯥꯖꯤꯟ ꯅ꯭ꯌꯨꯁ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯅ ꯆꯦꯐꯣꯡ ꯑꯃ ꯔꯤꯂꯤꯖ ꯇꯧꯔꯝꯃꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯅ ꯋꯥ ꯈꯔ ꯉꯥꯡꯉꯝꯃꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯩ ꯎꯆꯤꯟ ꯅꯥꯆꯤꯟꯅ ꯅꯥꯟꯊꯣꯔꯛꯄ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯅꯥꯟꯊꯣꯔꯛꯄꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯍꯣꯜꯁꯤ ꯊꯤꯐꯝ ꯈꯪꯗꯗꯅ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯉꯥꯎꯈꯤꯗ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯒꯥꯔꯤ ꯃꯆꯥꯗ ꯂꯥꯛꯆꯕꯅꯤꯅꯀꯣ ꯁꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯇꯦꯟꯁꯤꯟꯖꯔꯕꯗ ꯉꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯀꯥꯏꯗ ꯂꯩꯖꯔꯤꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯅꯕꯀꯨꯃꯥꯔ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯎꯄꯜ ꯀꯨꯃꯥꯔ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯙꯅꯃꯟꯖꯨꯔꯤ ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯚꯔꯁꯤꯇꯤ ꯁꯤ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯍꯦꯠ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯗꯤꯄꯥꯔꯠꯃꯦꯟ ꯑꯗꯨꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯃꯥꯡꯗ ꯂꯦꯡꯖꯔꯤꯕ ꯏꯕꯨꯡꯉꯣ ꯏꯕꯦꯝꯃ ꯄꯨꯝꯅꯃꯛ ꯏꯕꯨꯡꯉꯣ ꯏꯕꯦꯝꯃ ꯍꯥꯏꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯉꯣꯟꯗ ꯍꯟꯕ ꯌꯥꯎꯔꯝꯃꯁꯨ ꯏꯕꯨꯡꯉꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯤ ꯁꯥꯔ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯃꯅꯤ ꯏꯕꯦꯝꯃ ꯍꯥꯏꯁꯤꯅ ꯃꯦꯝ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯍꯥꯏꯖꯕꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯂꯧꯕꯤꯌꯨ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯊꯝꯖꯔꯤꯕꯁꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯇꯁꯦꯡꯅ ꯑꯃ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯉꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯊꯧꯔꯝ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝꯅꯗꯤ ꯅꯨꯡꯉꯥꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯉꯁꯥꯏ ꯏꯆꯥꯁꯤꯡꯅ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯀꯝꯃꯨꯅꯤꯇꯤꯒꯤ ꯀꯦꯔꯤꯌꯔ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯑꯃ ꯐꯤꯖꯣꯜ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯁꯦꯠꯂꯤꯗꯣ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯈꯤꯇꯪ ꯆꯥꯅꯕ ꯋꯥꯠꯂꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯑꯩ ꯂꯧꯖꯩ ꯃꯔꯝꯗꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯅꯣ ꯃꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯃꯔꯝꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯆꯍꯤ 30 ꯍꯦꯟꯅ ꯑꯗꯣꯝꯗ ꯂꯥꯛꯑꯦ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯍꯣꯡꯉꯛꯏꯕꯁꯨ ꯈꯪꯉꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯍꯣꯡꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯀꯗꯥꯏꯐꯥꯎ ꯍꯣꯡꯉꯨꯗꯒꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯄꯣꯠꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯁꯦꯝꯗꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯄꯦꯟꯗꯦꯟ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯃꯥ ꯇꯧꯅꯤꯡꯕꯗ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯐꯤꯕꯝꯁꯨ ꯑꯗꯨꯝ ꯂꯥꯛꯑꯦꯅ ꯈꯜꯂꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯈ꯭ꯋꯥꯏꯗꯒꯤ ꯂꯨꯔꯤꯗꯤ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁ ꯄꯤꯄꯜ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯉꯥꯛꯇ ꯂꯩꯍꯧꯒꯗ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯌꯥꯝꯕ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁ ꯄꯤꯄꯜꯒ ꯌꯦꯜꯍꯧ ꯃꯤꯒ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒ ꯁꯥꯒꯣꯟꯅꯔꯤꯕ ꯀꯜꯆꯔ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯀꯔꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯄꯣꯠꯁꯛ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯇꯦꯟꯖꯦꯕꯜ ꯍꯦꯔꯤꯇꯦꯖ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯍꯨꯟꯗꯣꯛꯕ ꯌꯥꯔꯣꯏ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤꯕꯨ ꯉꯥꯛꯄꯒꯤ ꯃꯊꯧꯁꯤ ꯇꯥꯗꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯊꯝꯖꯅꯤꯡꯉꯤది ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯁꯣꯏꯔꯤꯗꯤ ꯃꯁꯤꯗꯩꯗ ꯁꯣꯏꯔꯤꯗꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯨ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯕꯤꯁꯤꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯤꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯚꯥꯔꯠ ꯁꯔꯀꯥꯔꯒꯤ ꯑꯅꯧꯕ ꯏꯗꯨꯀꯦꯁꯟ ꯄꯣꯂꯤꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯀꯔꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯦꯗꯤꯁꯅꯦꯜ ꯅꯣꯂꯦꯖ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯞꯆꯤꯟꯕ ꯃꯊꯧ ꯇꯥꯔꯛꯏ ꯍꯥꯏꯁꯦ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯆꯨꯝꯃꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜꯗ ꯇꯝꯃꯤꯕ ꯑꯣꯖꯥꯁꯤꯡꯁꯨ ꯉꯥꯏꯔꯦ ꯃꯍꯩꯔꯣꯏꯁꯤꯡꯁꯨ ꯉꯥꯏꯔꯦ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯈꯪꯕ ꯑꯃ ꯆꯪꯕ ꯃꯊꯧ ꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯃꯔꯝꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯀ꯭ꯂꯥꯁꯔꯨꯝꯒꯤ ꯀꯥ ꯃꯔꯤꯈꯛꯇꯨꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯀꯟꯐꯥꯏꯟ ꯇꯧꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯍꯨꯠꯇ ꯆꯠꯊꯣꯛꯑꯒ ꯂꯣꯟꯁꯨ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁ ꯂꯣꯟꯁꯤ ꯀꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯒꯅꯤ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯁꯤ ꯑꯌꯥꯝꯕꯅ ꯃꯩꯇꯩꯂꯣꯟꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯁꯤꯊꯔꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯌꯥꯏ ꯃꯩꯇꯩꯂꯣꯟꯁꯤ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯃꯥꯡꯁꯤꯜꯂꯛꯑꯦ ꯃꯔꯝꯗꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯅꯣ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯏꯄꯟꯙꯧ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯂꯩꯇ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯏꯄꯥ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯏꯗꯣꯝꯆꯥꯒꯥꯏꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯅꯕ ꯂꯩꯔꯛꯇ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯃꯔꯝꯗꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯅꯣ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯃꯥꯡꯁꯤꯜꯂꯛꯏꯅꯦꯕ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗꯒꯤ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯇꯝꯕꯤꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯔꯦꯗꯤꯑꯣꯗ ꯈꯪꯗꯦ ꯑꯃꯗ ꯈꯪꯗꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯊꯧꯔꯝ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯉꯥꯡꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗꯨꯗ ꯃꯣꯏꯅꯗꯤ ꯏꯪꯂꯤꯁꯇ ꯉꯥꯡꯉꯤꯕ ꯏꯪꯂꯤꯁꯇ ꯉꯥꯡꯉꯤꯗꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯈꯪꯗꯦ ꯌꯥꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯅꯛꯁꯟꯅꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣই ꯂꯣꯟ ꯂꯩꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯊꯤꯕꯤꯔꯒ ꯉꯥꯡꯕꯤꯌꯨ ꯁꯤꯅꯤ ꯃꯔꯝꯗꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯅꯣ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯂꯣꯟꯁꯤ ꯃꯥꯡꯁꯤꯜꯂꯛꯏꯅꯤꯅꯁꯨ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯃꯁꯤꯗ ꯅꯠꯇꯅ ꯄꯣꯠ ꯆꯩ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯥꯡꯗ ꯃꯤꯠꯃꯥꯡꯗ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯃꯤꯠꯃꯥꯡꯗ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯃꯥꯡꯁꯤꯜꯂꯛꯑꯦ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯃꯤꯠꯃꯥꯡꯗ ꯄꯣꯠ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯃꯥꯡꯁꯤꯜꯂꯛꯑꯦ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯌꯨꯝꯊꯣꯡ ꯈꯨꯗꯤꯡ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯦꯔꯨꯁꯨ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯃꯔꯣꯏ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯃꯦꯔꯨꯛꯁꯤ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯖꯔꯁꯨ ꯃꯦꯔꯨꯛ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯀꯔꯝꯕ ꯃꯐꯝꯗ ꯃꯁꯤꯕꯨ ꯊꯝꯃꯒ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯕ ꯌꯥꯒꯗꯒꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯈꯪꯕ ꯃꯊꯧ ꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯌꯥꯡꯀꯣꯛꯇꯤ ꯃꯔꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯤ ꯌꯥꯡꯀꯣꯛ ꯅꯠꯇꯕ ꯄꯣꯠ ꯆꯩ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯡꯁꯦ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯀꯗꯥꯏꯗ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯒꯗꯒꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯆꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯏꯆꯤꯜ ꯏꯅꯥꯎꯁꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯄꯣꯠ ꯆꯩ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯉꯁꯤꯗꯤ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯃꯛ ꯃꯥꯡꯁꯤꯜꯂꯛꯑꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯕꯛ ꯊꯤꯔꯤꯕꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯏꯗꯨꯀꯦꯁꯟꯒꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯀꯨꯂꯝꯗ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯀꯔꯤꯀꯨꯂꯝꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯉꯁꯤꯐꯥꯎ ꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯀꯔꯤꯀꯨꯂꯝꯁꯦ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯃꯛ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯌꯥꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯏ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯂꯝꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯔꯨꯜꯗ ꯑꯝꯇ ꯌꯥꯎꯗꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯀꯔꯝꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯒꯦꯕꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯌꯥꯎꯗ꯭ꯔꯕꯅꯤꯅ ꯁꯥꯇ꯭ꯔ ꯁꯥꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯁꯤꯡꯗꯨ ꯈꯪꯗꯦ ꯈꯨꯗꯝ ꯑꯃꯅꯤꯗ ꯑꯩ ꯍꯥꯏꯅꯤꯡꯕꯗꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯂꯩ ꯍꯟꯗꯛ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯕꯣꯔꯗ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯏꯗꯨꯀꯦꯁꯟꯗ ꯕꯣꯔꯗ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯀꯥꯎꯟꯁꯤꯜꯗ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯔꯤꯛꯄꯒꯤ ꯇꯦꯛꯁꯕꯨꯛ ꯁꯦꯝꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ 11, 12 ꯁꯦꯝꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯗ ꯂꯥꯏ ꯌꯦꯛꯄꯁꯤꯕꯨ ꯂꯩꯕ꯭ꯔꯅꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯛꯑꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯆꯤꯡꯗꯕꯨ ꯂꯥꯏ ꯌꯦꯛꯄꯁꯤꯕꯨ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯒꯗ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯛꯑꯦꯕ ꯃꯔꯝꯗꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯃꯣꯏꯗꯤ ꯃꯄꯥꯟꯗꯕꯨ ꯇꯝꯃꯛꯄ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯒꯤ ꯁꯤ ꯀꯟꯇꯦꯛꯁꯁꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯝ ꯈꯪꯗꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯗꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯁꯥꯇ꯭ꯔ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯏꯂꯤꯃꯦꯟ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯍꯦꯔꯤꯇꯦꯖ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯡꯁꯦ ꯈꯪꯕ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯋꯥꯠꯂꯦꯕ ꯈꯪꯕ ꯋꯥꯠꯂꯤꯁꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯨ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯇꯝꯕꯤꯗꯕ ꯃꯃꯥ ꯃꯄꯥꯅꯁꯨ ꯇꯝꯕꯤꯗ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯗꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯖꯥꯁꯤꯡꯅꯁꯨ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯦ ꯐꯤꯜ ꯋꯥꯔꯛꯇ ꯈꯤꯇꯪ ꯊꯣꯛꯄ ꯑꯃ ꯃꯊꯧ ꯇꯥꯏ ꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯈꯜꯂꯤ ꯃꯔꯝꯗꯤ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯀꯔꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯏꯟꯇꯔꯅꯦꯁꯅꯦꯜ ꯗꯦ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯗ ꯋꯥꯔꯜ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁ ꯄꯤꯄꯜ ꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯂꯥꯛꯏꯁꯦ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯍꯦꯟꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯔꯣꯝꯗ ꯍꯦꯟꯅ ꯃꯄꯨꯡ ꯐꯥꯕ ꯂꯥꯛꯄ ꯌꯥꯏ ꯃꯔꯝꯗꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯅꯣꯡꯃ ꯊꯥꯗꯣꯔꯛꯏꯁꯦ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯈꯤꯇꯪ ꯊꯥꯗꯣꯛꯅꯕ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯕ ꯇꯥꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯗꯣꯀꯨꯃꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯦ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯃꯊꯧ ꯇꯥꯏ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯗꯣꯀꯨꯃꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯎꯗ꯭ꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯐꯔꯛ ꯇꯥꯒꯅꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯗꯣꯀꯨꯃꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟꯁꯤ ꯇꯧꯗ꯭ꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯅꯣꯡꯃ ꯃꯥꯡꯊꯔꯛꯄ ꯌꯥꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯔꯨꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯗꯣꯀꯨꯃꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯃꯊꯧ ꯇꯥꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯗꯒꯤ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯑꯩꯁꯤ ꯈꯤꯇꯪ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯣꯛꯑꯒ ꯍꯥꯏꯖꯕ ꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯋꯥꯔꯣꯜ Indigenous people मनुदी चलागा खैतंग हाइदोक हाइबे तारे ngasi Manipuri इतिहास ता पुवारी दा हाइबे तारे पुवारी सिदा मणिपुर रे थोंगा पा गेट हाइसे गेट रे मफम अनि ले से कोइ ता सु लाइक दे याव अखोइ सा वेस्टर्न गेट हाइबा म ले ईस्टर्न गेट हाइबा म ले ईस्टर्न गेट अनि ले अदि वेस्टर्न गेट अनि ईस्टर्न गेट ले जी करि देने वो ताराव हाइबा ताराव हाइबा ट्राइब सिना नाइ अद ताराव सी कनाइ मतम द ले के वो कोइ क्याम 15 century อะไรไปเลยอันมคอยน่ะเกียที่ไงอันนี้คอยดูปัญหาที่น่ะมุอันนี้สุภาพเกียไงอันให้ก็คอยดูให้มันใช่อันคอยดูให้มันใช่ก็ไอ้คอยดีแกงก็มาริงกัมขันอะไรเกี่ยวกับอะไรอันนี้อามุวอชันเกียรน่ะคารัมปัญหาแบบมันก็คอยดูคารัมปัญหาแบบมันก็เขาส่งปัญหาแบบมันนี่เลยอันเขาส่งปัญหาเอาเกิดเกนี้อันนี้อินเนอร์เกียรน่ะคารัมเกียรอันนี้ให้ว่าgive any จะง่ายก็สิ่งนี้ใช่ไม่ใช่ผู้ชายก็มาทำละมาทำแบบนี้จันทร์ที่มาแล้วหายแล้วไอ้คุยคารัมให้ว่าที่มีกลุ่มเสียเรามีจะมันที่ตาเลยอันดูอะไรก็ดีนี่โทรมาคุยนักการตัวกันคุยให้ไปสิแล้วนี่โทรนะมาคุยกันมีกี่มาอย่างเห็นดวงตัวนี้บ้างผู้นั้นมาดูจันทร์ที่มาแล้วโอ้ยนะมาราณีมาคุณโอ้ยนะหลวงพ่อคารัมที่เห็นกันนะคนนั้นอันดูมาเนี่ยตัวเราที่งาชีแบบคารัมหมายว่าไอ้คุยนี่เช่นดูก็จะได้ยินเลยเลยร้อยเหมือนกันอันดูไม่ตัวนะไอ้คุยนี่มาสักทีมาริงงานยุ่งมาให้เด็กมาริงให้บัตรายก็สิงาชีไอ้คุยนี่ก็สิเดี๋ยวมีสิ่งอย่างอะไรมีสิ่งอย่างมาเลยมาเรื่องที่เกิดมาบอกมาคุยจริงงาชีแต่กี้เนี่ยจะฮิตราประมาณนั้นมาคุยเช่นตรงนี้ทุกท่านเลยจุดผลิตกับสิ่งไอ้อัตโตคอมมูนิตี้ให้ได้ไอ้มันคอมมูนิตี้มันมีเป็นจะร้อยมาคุยมาคุยที่เราเนี่ยน้อยว่านี่มันดูร้อยไม่ปีเลยเนี่ยไอ้คุยโอโลเนี่ยไอ้คุยกังวลที่โอโลเนี่ยลำดุปีเลยนี่ไอ้ปีอ่ะให้ที่กังวลนี่ข้างหน้ามันดูมันไม่ได้อยู่มันอันไม่ต้องตัวมันฉะนั้นเดี๋ยวดีอย่าร้อยน้อยที่มันยังให้ก็กังวลที่เห็นแบบตกใจให้ไปดีกี่หุ่นที่คุยที่ทำนาปกปีคนเดียวทำนาปกปีให้จัดมันคุณยิ่งคุณให้ว่าคุณนะดูลำดูเลยก็เชื่อมันก็มวยแม่มาที่การมวยก็โอ้ยนะปวดแล้วคุณดาวเลยอะดูเลยเราที่จะทำให้ที่ไอ้คุยนะไอ้คุยเนี่ยจุดของมันที่ไอ้คุยนะทำไมตัวมันที่อย่างเดียวนี่อะไรคุยจะมาได้ไอ้คุยดีकांचीपुरेश्वर हाइबा महाराज ना कांचीपुरेश्वर हाइबा जी गमी सिंह महाराज जी गमी सिंह महाराज सिना का माइंड तो के चौथे बत्रा सिना मुझे लगा ना मी ही ले रखा ना जो का माइंड तो के मुझे मुझे बता लेना हाइबा इंडिजिनस पीपल ये लोग मुझे बता लेना मुझ पे आके को हाइ ना गमी सिंह ना सिना फाइ ना तो लगा मो कोई ने जोड़ में पाम जाएที่ก็คนที่แต่ก็คงแต่เทียบเลยอารมณ์มาค่อยสินี่เราทบไปอย่างไรมาคุยกันเลยดีบ้าพูดใจหูดีบ้าพูดดีบ้าลำกันกันก็น่าบ้าภาษามาสิยังไงทำไมเราทบไปอย่างมีทงโอเรนเท่อันดูให้ไปดูเท่เลยดูนั่งสิถึงโอรินเลยนั่นแต่ที่บ้านเนี่ยอันดูมาสิเนี่ยมาแล้วนะมาสิที่สุดที่สิ่งนั้นนะมาใช้ยุทธมาฟังไปอีกหนึ่งเท่ลายตรงนั้นลายอะไรกันมวยกุหลาบนี่มันมาพูดกันมาสิทบานเขาไม่เหมือนกันที่ให้ลายคนที่นี่ไอ้คนที่พาสติสเตอร์ไอ้คุยจริงอะสิไอ้คุยนี่ก็หายใจเลี้ยงมีสิ่งที่ไอ้คุยกับที่นั่นบางคนก็ได้อาทิตย์บางคนไอ้คุยกับที่หายในงานอันนี้บางคนไอ้คุยกับที่ตรงนี้ไอ้คุยกับมันนี่ที่กับที่หน่วยเองอะสิผมมีได้คุยกับที่สุดจ้าใครคุยกับที่สุดยาวเด็กอาทิตย์มันนี่พูดอะไรดีบ้าพูดแบบยุคกับที่โน้ให้ไปที่ intangible heritage ไอ้ล่ะใส่ปัญญาที่บ้าดิฉันปัญญาที่บ้าไอ้คนที่โอเรลิเทชันวายโร่อันเดียคนที่นั่นทางคริสเตียนที่วันที่อินทิวเทนที่จันทร์คนที่ลายเราดีจันทร์พวกนี้อาดูลายแบบที่ดีลายเราก็จันทร์ไม่ใช่ลายเราที่คลีลำลายเราที่ที่อายามันขันเลยเด็กอาดูอายามันขันเลยแต่ก็สู้ไอ้คนนั้นดีมาดูไอ้นั่นมณีปุรบาร์มาอาสามเทปุระบังกลาเทศมาสิฮาราอีกไอ้ที่พลังมาก็ดีไอ้คุยที่เห็นนั่นวายกันด้วยอันนั้นมาสิไอ้คุยที่ทั่วกับคำว่ามาทั้งตายไอ้ก็สิ่งนั้นที่เป็นเรื่องจริงอันนั้นคุยที่ไอ้คุยน่ะอามุเย่ก็มาทำกันน่ะใช่ไอ้คุยนี่เลยดีบ้าคุยที่ปีนี้บ้าอินดิวิชนซิสเต็มที่มาทักกันแต่ที่เช่นโนเลสอันที่ก็อามุไอ้คุยที่โลเคอลลี่เลยบ้าโนเลสนั่นใช่ฮับจนมาทั้งตายนี่เลยมันดี मधु नत्रगदी अखोई नोम नोम ये कोई मांगेर पयाय है खंगे मरम दी कई नोबो टीचबुक तब यावदबना मणिपुर लेबा म्यूजियम सिंग चपयाय मणिपुर लेबा तोमान तोमान लाइ कोई भी पार्क सिंग चपयाय बसी अखोई लोई न खंगी न बसी मथो व ताय नि खले अदुगा अखोई चाब थपरे सुंगाई अखोई मित खुदी दी युम चाय नतबा मपाने सथोगा नसाके अखोई हाना ले जेरंबा खुसा कमाई तो चाबा या ये हाइबे येंगो मथो व ताय नि खले मरमदी करिगिनो हाइबु अखोई सागी की विवासिनी मरक्तदी लेपाक नावा साबा चपुदा चा खोबा याक जानरी अदुगा अखोई सु मपान थोकु मतमदा हाइदी मणिपुर की मपान दा अखोइना फिर स्टडी तो मतमदा नखोई ग्रुप पुंजरगा मान सारो तारा सारो सी थोंगी कल्चर गे खनन बन थोता है मसीनी आई हाइजनिबा अदुना मयादा खितम हाइजा सी आरुई बोइना आई हाइजनिबी अखोइना हुजी मसागी अखोई पीसी न तंबिहिबा नेचुरल हेरिटेज टेजेबल हेरिटेज द लेबा नुंग धाकबा ओरो टेक्सटी दा हाकबा ओरो सुम मयाम सिंथे मसी अखोइना खोमजलगा अखोई अवांग को भारत नतना अखोई खान को इशागी ओइना अखोई अंगोदा लेजरिबा कल्चरल हेरिटेज कम्प्लेक्स दामसो लेबिरो अदुगा लेबि अदुगा अखोई मजोइदा लेक्चर आई ता हाइवे आबा ताको याबा कोई काचे दे अदुना खेबी खेजल नि प्रोग्राम मसन सन ले ने खलबिना मसाई दाई ते जे के मैं पनो दी
Thagachari sir, respected Sri Mutua Bahadur, Director Mutua Museum in Palbu, Mamalayam Laba Ozagi speech Taba Pangan Bibagi Daman Amukahana Tanaba Kondokchari, Lenana Pipiriba mayamna akhoi mangtharakliba lol asi kannanabagidamag tinbiriba naha mayam sina maroina kannam khutang khonaminasi haijari loinana makha chathajarako oina mathangda mo kousenjari ngasigi thoramasigi president oibiriba ikai khumnajaraba khoi oja professor th Ravikant Singh dean students welfare amadi head Department of Anthropology, Dhanamanjuri University की थौसु पुबिरीबा ओजाना वाफम खरदंग थंबिरनाबा कौसंजरी
Masigi International Day of World's Indigenous People Hariba Thauramasi damakta lengbirakba khudingmabu ikok nanjari ngasigi akoiba lengbirakba Waza Bahadur social activist director Mutua Museum Imphal Wazabo kai kumnawuzari Waza the respected Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dhanamanjuri University, Professor W. Sanbabu, Waza, Dr. O.K. Singh, Kumar, renowned archaeologist, Amadi, Dam College of Commerce, the principal, Oibiram Waza, Professor W. Navakumar Singh, Hana Tungan Manipur University ki Din Oibiramba, former head Oibiba, Aduga, social activist Hijaba Tarioza, Kanoda, Adukutsun, Oibiriboza, Magdalene Sinbiribo, Tapi Tambiraboza Singh, colleague, head of departments, cultural coordinator Dhanamanjuri University, cultural club ki Tungwan ba New Singh, head of department Singh Tungwan ba University ki Tungwan Pagi University ki Tungwan ba college Singh ki Uza Singh, Satra Singh, Dhanamanjuri University की Students Union की कांगो media persons आहान बता उन्होंने कोई को पंजरी कोई नंगसी पांथोक सरीबा थोरम से मरुइना Department of Anthropology Dhanamanjuri na पांथोक बददी आहान बा थोरम नी हाइरिबा थोरम से Dhanamanjuri University na calendrical event खरबो तोंगान बा department सिंगना युंगो ओइरगा पांथोक नबगी दमता थौदान तर सिंगबी हाइरिबा थौदान सिंगदुगी मनुंगदा Anthropology department ta mapung oina पांथोक नबगी दमता पीरिबा अदुगबा observation amani asigi International Day of Indigenous World's Indigenous People हाइबसी 2025 Ngasi 2020-25 की ओइना Indigenous people and AI defending rights, shaping futures. Nisai han digi hona oza no kumar na hona nasai paradigm gi keto si hai ba hobi jai taseng bani ngasi aikoi na lairiba aikoi na hingliba asigumba society tongan ba khoi ki keno di lei biri ko khoi tongan ba department sing lei biri atobe AI de hena khangbi ba physics department de keno ki department mayam am su lei atu ba khoi puna ba mioi ba ngak ten mioi ba ma oiraga di hai ba mioi ba singi mioi ba ki sebetja ki mioi ba ki culture ki na ki oiba aikoi की ओइबा सकतम खरदी थम्बा हाइबसी तंगाई कदबने हाइना खनजे हाइबा असिगुबा सकतम सिंगसिना मागी ओइबा सकतम सिंगसि लेरकांदा मुद्दनबगी अदुगुबा मसक अमस उहेंदोइ ngasi एखोगी कल्चर सिना मांग खबा ngasi एखोगी साद्र सिंगसिना असोकी मतिक फजना सेलाइबा मनिंग तमना चजरिबा नाके ओइबा फिजोन सिंगसिया ngasi di matam no walak pada batung indra dumit khudingi set padi phangba natre adu asigumba International Day of Indigenous Peoples Day sidisda maning tamna set pa phangjabagi sumba tanja ma logasi su ekoi gi oiba nat heritage haibase kanjanabagi adumba masak amanya haina logi maram asimakna ngasi ge sigumba thoram si deisida ekoi gi nat ko represent singase kari mas jingnabam ta yaudana ikai ba yaudana hojiki matam dadi wasai oza balun haibi duni mut mayam si yausanare aduga aikoina kana gu matam kari gu matam da na kyo vision se selaga la matam da ikai ba yaure adu de aikoi gi oba na ki sakam che kaya yam na kan bada kaya yam na kaino lori ba ke aikoi gi oba vision le haina khanja ba vision se selaga lambi da satpa thoram yawo matam sida aikoi gi sada ikai ro bokchar ba aikoi gi lon ase ngangja ba matam da aikoi gi lon si dagi hena phab lon ama hena lei haidra khalaka da aikoi gi lon si bo thawa sarak tar ba aikoi gi lon si da nemi atop lon sing sina wangi atop lon sing si tam sing si sina ra kan da na hena mapung pha ba adu ma tam ma oi hena sakhat pa mioi mo oi hena khalak ma matam sida siguma matam ma la ko matam sida technology ke ano ba people ma la ko matam sida aikoi da phok ni se aikoi da scenery ba challenge ma ya ma to education oi bi ai environment oi bi ai social development oi bi ai development oi bi ai economic oi bi ai hai ba ma am singa se masi aikoi na masi gi juk sida le masi gi matam sida le ba miu singa sida masi go thengna bam sangi masi thengna da ba gi da mukta UN na Indigenous people singa si bo thengna da ba gi da si mo khudong ti ba singa se salian singa si mayok da ba gi da mukta 1982 ki matam du ki kaino si lower kanda 2024 December de hona UN National Assembly na General Assembly na hariba International Day of Indigenous People hai ba se pangthok tu na la ke bane siga loina na ngasai oza singna habi ke ba loan ki hai si so popular culture ki food ki loan ki hai basing se loan ki so international decade of indigenous language hai basi 2022 da kina 2032 phau ki decade se ma pa thok na ko na ri aduna hai basing ase ai koi mang da na lak na bai tam ai koi na ngasi ai koi Manipur da leba samjala ka da ai koi ki Manipur leba nipong khuding mak na ख्वाइदगी दुमसीना खंजरिबसे कना ख्वाइदगी मरुना खंजरिब कना एकोगी इमा हाइबसे हाने लौरसे इमा की खोमांग लमन सिंगबा ngमदना हाइरिबो करिगे दमक इमा वांग लौगिरिबा इमा की खोमांग लमन सिंगबा ngमदना अदबा पुनसि जिलेंगनि हाइरिबा मागी लमन नम तुम तोलगा सटकनि हाइबसे मसी अदुदगी मु इमा सदगी इंपोर्टेंस सी लाकांदा अतोप मफम दसु से अखोई युम मुसु अखोई इमा की सक्तम मुन लौरगा ला युम अमा लेबा मतमदा अखोई युम से इमा की मसक ने लौरिगे अदुमाय तौदना अखोइना हेना पाथोर कांदा अखोई इरमदम सिमसु इमा ने लौरि करिगे दमता अखोई बु मफम मसिदा लैहनबिरिबा हिंगनबिरिबा मफम मसिदा सापटबा अमदि मफम मसिदा थेंगरिबा खुदिंग मक्से मासिना योपी थापिरगा अखोइसे लेरपनिना अखोइना अखोगी थमोइदा ख्वाइदगी नुंसिना पोक्सरिबसे इरमदम सिनि इमा भि हाइरियो मता मसिदा पनिनिबसे करिनो हाइबदा इंडिजिनस पीपल ओइगा तारगदी महाकना हौरप मतमदा मसागी ओजा नबो पानसु रोयरा पापुर की वाली महपदगी मार्विन हैरिस की वाली सुदुम लई मसागी ओजा एनवायरमेंटल साइंस की ओजा बसन जुयो बिली मसा environment की मरम सिजे हेन जो खंगी न बने kan ai nga sai swai da panjaning se ima hair kanta ai koi bu lu na khali sa ai koi bu thapi ri ba ai koi bu le hindi ri ba ai koi bu no the technologically advancement da la hali ba puna mak sa nga sai environment si ka susan da ka da koi hinga ne aduna ai koi bu hinga na gi masak pi ri ba ai koi na khanjari ba khalon singa sa sai oza lo wan su pan pi ri ba koi gi imik ke ai koi world view li yeng ba se ai koi gi mi ngam ka sa ga chara ka da thol aduna हाइबो मियेंग सिगा लोइना लोइना ना कोइना नुक्ति की लोइना की सिगुम्बा कल्चर जो तुम स्वाइ की तुम कोइ एनवायरनमेंट से एक्सप्लॉइट होगा रिसोर्सिंग से फंगा का मदुगी सफल लग अदुदगी अमुक ला आकांदा अदुना ने कोइना नुंसी बसे इरम दमदा इमादा हाइसिंग से एनवायरनमेंट बु नुंसी बने कोइ इकोलॉजी से नुंसी बनी अदु दाइट की कोइ इकोनॉमी लाकदु नेना खंजै इकोनॉमी देगी मथंग मथंग तुम कोइ की सफल बसे लाकनिना अखोइना ख्वाइदगी हाना थेंगरिबा अखोइगी इमासिना अखोइ खोमलांगमन मागी कनोसे इरक इथागा लेलकगुमना अखोइ एनवायरनमेंट सिदा लेरिबा इमा लमदम हसिना मसिना पिरैबा कनोसे मसिगी कनोसी की कानाबा मैमसी सी येगा कांदा एनवायरनमेंट की पॉइंटगी येगा कांददी कल्चर की पोट खतंग थमदबदा एनवायरनमेंट की पोट थमकांददी मसिगी मसिमकना अखोइना रेस्पेक्ट से याम फजना तौसबनि हाना लुसी अदुगा हाइबसिंग असिना मु मुदरक बतारगदि होय मागी मफम होंगा कांदा लाचर कांदा कनो लाखनो मयाम यावे मदु यावदे हाबदते टेक्नोलॉजिकली नसागी टेक्नोलॉजिकल सफलकोगी मतुगिना तुंगान बा डायनामिक ओब कल्चर निना अहोंबा मयाम लाए इजु गुजा पादुना पनबिगी बा फिजोल सो दोइना सेली बसे मसा मसा के कांगलुप सिंग पिरक फिजोल मसे कोइना उचरी बसे चा मागी कांगलुप ना यारे हाइना खलकांदा इरक अदुम फिजोल तौबदबो इंटीग्रेशन अमककी मियेंग दि येंगा कांदा कोइना हाइ बसिंग से मिक्स अप तौबा सात्र सिंग से मामागी नात मामागी खतना इंटरसेंस तौला कांदा से लगादा थोपने अदुबो अहोंबा लाई हाइसिने अदुमगसु ngasiगी मा खयोगी लेंसिन बिरेबा माउगी इमा सिंगी अखोगी माउ मादर्स एसोसिएशन नाइगद्रा ngasi वजांग साइ जा बिसिना पनबिकीबा एनईपी की करिगी अदेगी मयामना पनबिरीबा लोकल की सखन बखन पतमदा मखोइ सिंग से ngasi लाबिरीबा माउ इमा सिंग सिना मरुइना एनईपी लाबदा बैक की प्रोग्राम सिदा कोइगी माउ की जगोई की कनो सिंग से मसक सिंग से कावरपदगी ꯃꯣꯏ ꯃꯁꯥꯕꯨ ꯀꯥꯎꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯈꯜꯂꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯅꯧꯕ ꯏꯅꯧ ꯅꯧꯅ ꯇꯝꯕ ꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯗꯤꯄꯥꯔꯠꯃꯦꯟꯇ ꯌꯥꯎꯕ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯃꯦꯔꯤꯁꯨ ꯌꯥꯎꯕꯤꯔꯤ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯃꯦꯔꯤ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯃꯥꯎꯒꯤ ꯏꯃꯥꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯅ ꯈꯜꯂꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯃꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯖꯒꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯗꯦꯕꯂꯞ ꯇꯧꯔꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯖꯒꯣꯏꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯦ ꯗꯦꯕꯂꯞ ꯇꯧꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯁꯤ ꯆꯨꯝꯃꯦꯅ ꯈꯜꯂ ꯃꯣꯏ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯄꯨꯊꯣꯛꯆꯔꯤ ꯍꯥꯟꯅ ꯀꯥꯎꯔꯨꯔꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯌꯦ ꯃꯣꯏꯁꯨ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯗ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯀꯥꯎꯔꯨꯔꯕꯅꯤꯅ ꯄꯨꯊꯣꯛꯑꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕꯁꯦ ꯃꯥꯎ ꯗꯥꯟꯁ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤꯗꯩꯁꯤꯗ ꯁꯦꯂꯦꯕꯁꯇ ꯇꯝꯕꯤꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯆꯥꯛ ꯑꯃ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯛꯀꯗꯣꯏꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏ ꯑꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯁꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯃꯥꯎꯒꯤ ꯏꯃꯥꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯅ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯄꯨꯊꯣꯛꯏꯕꯁꯦ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯅꯨꯡꯉꯥꯏꯖꯕ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯊꯥꯒꯠꯆꯕ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯈꯨꯗꯣꯡꯆꯥꯕꯁꯤ ꯂꯧꯖꯔꯒ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯃꯥꯎꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯖꯒꯣꯏ ꯑꯃꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯒ꯭ꯔꯥꯝꯁꯤꯗ ꯍꯥꯞꯆꯕꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯒ꯭ꯔꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯂꯝꯗꯝꯁꯤꯕꯨ ꯅꯨꯡꯁꯤꯖꯕ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯂꯥꯛꯀꯗꯣꯔꯤ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯑꯃꯅ ꯑꯩ ꯉꯁꯥꯏ ꯍꯥꯏꯖꯕꯗ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯖꯥꯁꯤꯡꯅ ꯄꯟꯕꯤꯈꯤꯕ ꯑꯣꯖꯥꯁꯤꯡꯅ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯀꯨꯃꯥꯔꯅꯁꯨ ꯑꯍꯣꯡꯕ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯑꯃ ꯂꯥꯛꯄꯒꯤ ꯄꯟꯕꯤꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯑꯍꯣꯡꯕꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯂꯥꯛꯑꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯇꯦꯛꯅꯣꯂꯣꯖꯤꯀꯦꯜꯂꯤ ꯕꯦꯔꯤꯌꯔ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯂꯩꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯑꯍꯣꯡꯕꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯂꯥꯛꯑꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯐꯤꯕꯝꯁꯦ ꯀꯝꯗꯧꯅ ꯂꯩꯒꯗꯒꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤꯅꯦꯕ ꯁ꯭ꯋꯥꯏꯗꯅꯤ ꯗꯤꯐꯦꯟꯗꯤꯡ ꯔꯥꯏꯠꯁ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯁꯦꯄꯤꯡ ꯐ꯭ꯌꯨꯆꯔꯁ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯨꯠꯂꯒ ꯑꯗꯨꯝ ꯇꯣꯛꯈ꯭ꯔꯗ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯃꯥꯡꯈ꯭ꯔꯗ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯍꯣꯏ ꯑꯍꯣꯡꯕ ꯂꯥꯛꯏꯁꯤꯁꯨ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯏꯟꯚꯥꯏꯔꯟꯃꯦꯟꯇꯁꯨ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯍꯤꯡꯉꯤꯕ ꯏꯀꯣꯅꯣꯃꯤꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯐ ꯈꯦꯠꯅꯔꯛꯄ ꯃꯍꯤꯡ ꯈꯦꯠꯅꯔꯛꯄ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯨ ꯊꯣꯛꯂꯛꯏꯅꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯦ ꯗꯣꯀꯨꯃꯦꯟ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯍꯧꯔꯕ AIꯅ ꯄꯤꯔꯤꯕ ꯈꯨꯗꯣꯡꯆꯥꯕꯁꯤ ꯂꯧꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ AIꯁꯤꯗ ꯗꯣꯀꯨꯃꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟ ꯇꯧꯍꯧꯔꯒ ꯊꯝꯍꯧꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯃꯥꯡꯈ꯭ꯔꯒꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯀꯜꯆꯔ ꯁꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯌꯥꯏ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯀꯜꯆꯔ ꯁꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯂꯩ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯏꯅꯥꯠꯀꯤ ꯁꯛꯇꯝꯗꯣ ꯁꯤꯅꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯦ AIꯁꯤꯅ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯀꯜꯍꯟꯁꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯦꯕ AIꯅ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯂꯧꯁꯤꯜꯂꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯥꯔꯇꯤꯐꯤꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯏꯟꯇꯦꯂꯤꯖꯦꯟꯁꯁꯤꯅ ꯊꯝꯃꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯍꯥꯟꯅꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯕꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯃꯥꯡꯉꯕꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯁꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯅ ꯊꯝꯃꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯄꯦꯇꯦꯟ ꯂꯧꯕ ꯌꯥꯏ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯌꯥꯏ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯂꯥꯛꯀꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯦꯕ ꯁ꯭ꯋꯥꯏꯗ ꯌꯦꯡꯉꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯁꯦ ꯈꯨꯗꯝ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤꯅꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯀꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯣꯏꯅꯣ ꯄꯣꯠ ꯈꯨꯗꯤꯡꯃꯛꯁꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯗꯤ ꯑꯃꯒ ꯒ꯭ꯂꯣꯕꯦꯂꯥꯏꯖꯀꯤ ꯖꯨꯛ ꯆꯧꯕꯗ ꯒ꯭ꯂꯣꯕꯦꯜ ꯚꯤꯂꯦꯖ ꯑꯃ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗꯗꯤ ꯀꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯛꯀꯗꯣꯏꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯦꯕ ꯁꯦ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯖꯒꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯔꯥꯙꯤꯀꯥꯁꯨ ꯌꯥꯎꯕꯤꯔꯤ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯤ ꯊꯥꯕꯨꯡ ꯇꯥꯈꯤꯗ꯭ꯔꯁꯨ ꯑꯗꯨꯏꯁꯨ ꯑꯗꯨꯝ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯀꯅꯥꯅꯣ ꯈꯪꯗꯣꯏꯁꯦ ꯀꯔꯝꯕ ꯐꯨꯔꯨꯞꯄꯨ ꯈꯪꯒꯗꯣꯏꯅꯣ ꯁꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯗꯅ मागी फिजिकल की मये अदगी कइनोसिंग असे लाकांदा मागी मसकसिंग असे थोलकदि खंगदि अदुबो हाइबसिंग असे अहोंबसिंग असे लाक्तब यादबने लाकांदा तोंगान मसकसिंग लाखरकांदा मदुना मुटखरकांदा मांगरकांदा अमुक हन योखत के हबसे ngam tanja ma lakpe yae maram asina mangdringai mudringai UN na ngasagi indigenous people singa sigi kodong saba bina bagi tabukta sigumba International Day of Indigenous People saiba se pangtok na mayam sigi punjan na bagi atum basar ko mas koi gi pangtok ba celebration na mani haina khoje ai yam phajana di samjadre adubo oza Philip som nakanda mamai do amto wanjin biraga ozana ta PPT basa yang tien ba makakang keno ta som nakanda mamai se uhan biro ba oza sing phami sing je sagi ma biro ra keno to ra sika ka ya sida oza wena amta ka ko be den ai pai pai ra ama ani katang lokat sabani yamna kaino oina di lawjadre matam ai bi kitang dong za ma khatan lai ke bana थाजन रो हौजिक अहान बा कनो खतंग डायलॉग विलेज के कबुई मगा की हल की सकम नि हाइबा कनो सिबो इंस्ट्रूमेंट से होजिकि साबा कइतो सिंग सिकी मसक सिंग सि या वासल अबने कले जा बादु न सुहेना खनबि रकने रकले मथंग थाबिरो ꯃꯥꯎꯒꯤ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯃꯁꯛꯁꯤꯡꯅꯤ environment ꯌꯦꯡꯕꯤꯌꯨ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ environment ꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯁꯤꯡꯁꯦ ꯃꯥꯎꯒꯤ ꯏꯃꯥꯁꯤꯡꯁꯨ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯃꯦꯔꯤꯁꯨ ꯖꯒꯣꯏ ꯁꯥꯕꯒꯤ ꯊꯣꯛꯈ꯭ꯔꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯂꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯤꯒꯤ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯀꯩꯒꯤ ꯍꯧꯔꯛꯐꯝꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯂꯧꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯁꯤꯡ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯃꯐꯝꯁꯤꯡ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯃꯐꯝꯁꯤꯡ ꯎꯠꯂꯤ ꯂꯩꯔꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯅ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤꯗꯁꯨ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯐꯥꯎꯕꯗ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯣꯏꯅ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯂꯨ ꯈꯟꯖꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯊꯨꯝꯒꯤ ꯃꯍꯤ ꯆꯦꯟꯕ ꯏꯁꯤꯡ ꯍꯥꯏꯖꯕ ꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯕ꯭ꯔꯥꯏꯟ ꯋꯥꯇꯔꯁꯤ ꯃꯣꯏ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯂꯨꯅ ꯈꯜꯂꯒ ꯂꯩꯖꯔꯤꯕꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯁꯤ ꯆꯝꯐꯨꯠ ꯑꯃ ꯐꯨꯠꯂꯒꯁꯨ ꯈꯤꯇꯪ ꯍꯥꯞꯄꯒꯗꯤ ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯒ ꯁꯥ ꯑꯃ ꯊꯣꯡ ꯇꯥꯔꯒꯁꯨ ꯇꯦꯛ ꯇꯦꯛꯍꯜꯂ ꯂꯩꯍꯟꯕ ꯉꯝꯕ ꯆꯝꯐꯨꯠꯁꯤꯗ ꯍꯪꯒꯥꯝ ꯆꯝꯐꯨꯠ ꯇꯧꯔꯒꯁꯨ ꯍꯪꯒꯥꯝꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯒ꯭ꯔꯤꯟꯅꯦꯁꯁꯤꯡꯁꯦ ꯃꯥꯡꯍꯟꯗꯦ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯍꯥꯎꯏ ꯀꯥꯏꯅ ꯍꯥꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯒꯤ ꯕ꯭ꯔꯥꯏꯟ ꯋꯥꯇꯔꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯩ ꯎꯀꯨ ꯍꯨꯛꯄ ꯌꯥꯎꯏ ꯈꯔ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯃꯣꯠꯁꯜꯂꯛꯄ ꯁꯔꯨꯛꯁꯤꯡꯁꯨ ꯌꯥꯎꯔꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕꯁꯤꯡ ꯏꯁꯤꯡ ꯂꯧꯕꯒꯤ ꯁꯛꯇꯝ ꯑꯃꯈꯛ ꯎꯠꯂꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯃꯈꯦꯜꯒꯤ ꯖꯒꯥꯅꯤ ꯃꯈꯦꯜꯒꯤ ꯖꯒꯥꯁꯤꯗꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯅꯥꯒꯥꯁꯤꯡ ꯍꯧꯔꯛꯏ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯆꯤꯡꯕꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯋꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯅ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯏꯟꯚꯥꯏꯔꯟꯃꯦꯟꯁꯤ ꯈꯤꯇꯪ ꯎꯠꯆꯕꯅꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯆꯥꯎꯅ ꯎꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯐꯖꯅ ꯁꯦꯝꯖꯗꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯊꯪ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯃꯩꯇꯩꯒꯤ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟ ꯃꯁꯛꯅꯤ ꯑꯔꯥꯝꯕꯥꯏꯁꯤ ꯑꯗꯩ ꯑꯃꯅ ꯍꯤꯟꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛ ꯑꯃꯈꯛꯇꯪ ꯍꯥꯞꯄꯅꯤ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯇꯤ ꯎꯗ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯅ ꯀꯌꯥ ꯎꯈꯤꯗ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯅ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯂꯨꯒꯨꯟ ꯊꯥꯡꯕꯒꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯒꯤ ꯁꯔꯨꯛꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯀꯌꯥ ꯎꯈꯤꯗ꯭ꯔꯦꯅ ꯑꯃꯈꯛꯇꯪ ꯍꯥꯞꯄꯅꯤ ꯌꯥꯝꯄꯥꯛ ꯀꯟꯊꯣꯛꯄ ꯆꯠꯄꯁꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯔꯥꯝꯕꯥꯏ ꯂꯪꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯃꯁꯤꯅ ꯑꯔꯥꯝꯕꯥꯏꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯂꯪꯒ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯍꯩꯁꯤꯡꯕ ꯃꯩꯇꯩꯁꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯃꯆꯠ ꯑꯃꯈꯛ ꯂꯩꯔꯝꯕꯗꯨ ꯈꯖꯤꯛꯇꯪ ꯄꯨꯊꯣꯛꯆꯕꯅꯤ ꯃꯊꯪ ꯑꯁꯤꯅ ꯁꯂꯥꯡꯊꯦꯟꯒꯤꯅꯤ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯅꯨꯡꯁꯤ ꯎꯠꯆꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯈꯤꯇꯪ ꯅꯟꯖꯟꯅꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯁꯂꯥꯡꯊꯦꯟꯒꯤ ꯀꯕꯨꯏ ꯈꯨꯜ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯇꯤ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯅꯨꯡꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯂꯩꯇ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯀꯨꯃꯥꯔꯅ ꯍꯦꯟꯅ ꯈꯪꯕꯤꯔꯝꯒꯅꯤꯅ ꯈꯟꯖꯩ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯆꯪꯕꯁꯨ ꯈꯔ ꯈꯨꯗꯣꯡ ꯆꯥꯗ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯀꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯅꯗꯤ ꯃꯊꯪ ꯁꯤꯅ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯂꯨꯍꯨꯞꯄ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯇꯥꯡꯈꯨꯜ ꯒ꯭ꯔꯨꯞ ꯑꯃꯈꯛ ꯂꯩ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯇꯥꯡꯈꯨꯜ ꯒ꯭ꯔꯨꯞꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯇꯥꯡꯈꯨꯜꯒꯤ ꯏꯆꯤꯟ ꯏꯅꯥꯎ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯨ ꯌꯥꯎꯕꯤꯔꯤ ꯑꯁꯤꯗꯩꯁꯤꯗ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯑꯀꯛꯄ ꯍꯦꯠ ꯍꯟꯇꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛꯁꯤ ꯐꯥꯎꯕ ꯌꯥꯎꯅ ꯎꯠꯂꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯍꯦꯠ ꯍꯟꯇꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯇꯧꯗ꯭ꯔꯒꯁꯨ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯃꯁꯛꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯁꯥ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯐꯦꯁꯇꯤꯚꯦꯜꯁꯤꯡ ꯇꯧꯈꯤꯕꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯀꯣꯛꯁꯤꯡ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤꯅ ꯌꯨꯝꯗ ꯗꯦꯀꯣꯔꯦꯠ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯂꯩꯍꯧꯔꯤꯕ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛꯁꯤ ꯎꯠꯄꯅꯤ ꯃꯊꯪ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯉꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯃꯥꯡꯒꯤꯗ ꯑꯝꯇꯪ ꯍꯥꯏꯗ ꯂꯨꯍꯨꯞꯄ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯎꯖꯕꯗ ꯖꯒꯣꯏ ꯁꯥꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯁꯦ ꯇꯥ ꯑꯅꯤ ꯄꯥꯏꯔꯒ ꯇꯥꯁꯤ ꯑꯃꯅ ꯂꯝꯕꯨ ꯇꯥ ꯑꯁꯥꯡꯕꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯇꯦꯟꯕ ꯑꯃꯒ ꯄꯥꯏꯔꯒ ꯖꯒꯣꯏ ꯁꯥꯕ ꯑꯃ ꯎꯈꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯁꯥꯇ꯭ꯔꯤ ꯑꯃꯁꯨ ꯌꯥꯎꯔꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯋꯥꯏꯗ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯑꯃꯅ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯇꯦꯛꯇꯤꯞꯅꯦ ꯑꯆꯧꯕꯁꯤꯅ ꯑꯦꯇꯦꯛ ꯇꯧꯅꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯇꯦꯟꯕꯗ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯅꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯇꯥꯡꯈꯨꯒꯥꯏꯁꯤ ꯃꯃꯤꯡ ꯊꯣꯟꯕꯁꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯋꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯇꯥꯒꯤ ꯖꯒꯣꯏꯒ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯍꯩꯕ ꯁ꯭ꯋꯥꯏ ꯈꯔ ꯑꯃ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯐꯦꯔꯦꯁꯤꯁ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯀꯥꯡꯕꯨ ꯑꯃ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯝꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤꯁꯨ ꯈꯔ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯝꯒꯗ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯒꯤ ꯇꯥꯡꯈꯨꯜ ꯒ꯭ꯔꯨꯞꯇ ꯃꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯂꯨꯍꯨꯞꯄ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯂꯨꯍꯨꯞꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯐꯖꯕꯗꯒꯤ ꯂꯨꯍꯨꯞꯄꯅ ꯀꯧꯕꯅꯤ ꯀꯥꯏꯅ ꯑꯗꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯍꯥꯏ ꯃꯊꯪꯗ ꯁꯤꯅ ꯑꯟꯗ꯭ꯔꯣꯒꯤꯅꯤ ꯑꯟꯗ꯭ꯔꯣꯒꯤ ꯆꯥꯛ ꯊꯥꯕꯒꯤ ꯆꯥꯛꯀꯤ ꯃꯁꯛ ꯌꯥꯝꯅꯗꯤ ꯀꯨꯞꯄꯝꯒꯗꯧ ꯃꯥꯜꯂꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯂꯥꯞꯄꯝꯗꯧ ꯃꯥꯜꯂꯤ ꯃꯅꯤꯡꯗ ꯂꯩꯕꯗꯤ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯀꯤ ꯃꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯅꯍꯥꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯅ ꯄꯨꯂꯞ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯆꯥꯛꯁꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯇꯧꯕꯤ ꯊꯥꯕ ꯈꯣꯠꯄꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯃꯣꯏꯗꯗꯤ ꯕꯥꯃꯣꯟꯒꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯁꯤ ꯑꯃꯅꯒ ꯊꯣꯡꯕ ꯂꯩꯇꯕꯅꯤꯅ ꯃꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛ ꯑꯃꯈꯛ ꯍꯥꯏꯐꯦꯠꯇꯪ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁ ꯄꯤꯄꯜ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯎꯠꯆꯕꯅꯤ ꯃꯊꯪ ꯃꯔꯥꯝꯒꯤꯅꯤ ꯃꯔꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟ ꯇꯣꯉꯥꯟꯕ ꯃꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯆꯤꯟꯖꯥꯛ ꯆꯥꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯚꯤꯗꯤꯑꯣ ꯀ꯭ꯂꯤꯞꯁꯨ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯂꯩꯖꯩ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯞꯆꯗ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯎꯁꯤꯅ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯉꯥ ꯐꯥꯕꯒꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯇꯧꯕꯒꯤ ꯅꯨꯡ ꯆꯤꯡꯕꯒꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤ ꯚꯤꯗꯤꯑꯣ ꯀ꯭ꯂꯤꯞ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯂꯩꯖꯩ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯍꯥꯞꯆꯗ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯅꯗꯤ ꯃꯊꯪ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯗꯣ ꯑꯝꯇ ꯅꯝꯕꯤꯌꯨ ꯀ꯭ꯂꯤꯞꯇꯣ ꯑꯝꯇ ꯌꯥꯗꯣ ꯀ꯭ꯂꯤꯞ ꯆꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯑꯝꯇ ꯅꯝꯕꯅꯦ ꯃꯌꯥꯏꯗꯨꯗ ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯒ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯤꯞ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯑꯝꯇꯪ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯗ ꯊꯥꯔꯁꯨ ꯌꯥꯗꯧ ꯃꯥꯜꯂꯦ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯗ ꯌꯥꯗꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯚꯤꯗꯤꯑꯣꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯈꯟꯕꯗ ꯀꯌꯥ ꯎꯔꯝꯗꯧ ꯃꯥꯟꯗꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯚꯤꯗꯤꯑꯣ ꯀ꯭ꯂꯤꯞꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯂꯧꯈꯤꯕ ꯃꯇꯦꯛꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛꯇꯨꯗ ꯑꯝꯇꯪ ꯈꯔ ꯃꯥꯜꯂꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯇꯥꯔꯥꯎ ꯀꯥꯡꯕꯨꯒꯤꯅ ꯐꯧ ꯁꯨꯕꯒꯤꯅꯦ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯐꯧ ꯁꯨꯕꯁꯤꯗ ꯖꯒꯣꯏ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯁꯥꯕꯅꯤ ꯐꯧꯁꯤ ꯃꯤ ꯃꯔꯤꯅ ꯁꯨꯕꯅꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯁꯨꯔꯤꯕ ꯐꯧꯁꯤꯗꯤ ꯃꯤ ꯑꯅꯤ ꯈꯛꯇꯪꯒꯗꯤ ꯂꯛꯅꯕ ꯎꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯗꯗꯤ ꯃꯤ ꯃꯔꯤꯅ ꯂꯛꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯐꯧ ꯂꯛꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯗꯩꯗ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯐꯧꯁꯨ ꯏꯁꯩ ꯑꯅ ꯀꯨꯝꯃꯒ ꯁꯛꯑꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯐꯧꯁꯨ ꯏꯁꯩꯁꯤ ꯁꯛꯑꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯀꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯔ ꯂꯛꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛꯇꯨꯅꯤ ꯍꯣꯔꯦꯟ ꯉꯥꯛꯇꯪ ꯃꯔꯛ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯊꯠꯂꯒ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯐꯪꯉꯤꯉꯩꯗ ꯑꯃꯨꯛꯇꯪ ꯚꯤꯗꯤꯑꯣ ꯀ꯭ꯂꯤꯞꯇꯣ ꯇꯧꯖꯔꯒꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯃꯣꯅꯣꯟꯖꯟ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯀꯤꯗꯨ ꯃꯇꯝꯗꯨ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯍꯧꯈ꯭ꯔꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯊꯝꯕꯤꯔꯣ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯀꯤ ꯑꯔꯣꯏꯕꯒꯤꯗꯨꯗ ꯎꯠꯄꯤꯔꯣ ꯑꯔꯣꯏꯕꯒꯤꯁꯤ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤꯁꯦ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯕꯍꯥꯗꯨꯔꯗꯤ ꯍꯥꯟꯅ ꯎꯕꯤꯔꯝꯕꯅꯤ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯑꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯐꯥꯟ ꯑꯩ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯁꯨ ꯑꯣꯖꯥ ꯀꯨꯃꯥꯔꯗ ꯍꯪꯖꯔꯝꯕꯅꯤ ꯐꯥꯟꯁꯤ ꯐꯝꯅꯕꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯎꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯌꯦꯛꯁꯦ ꯗ꯭ꯔꯦꯒꯣꯟꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯃꯥꯏ ꯑꯣꯟꯁꯤꯟꯅꯕ ꯌꯥꯎꯔꯤꯕꯁꯤ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯇꯤ ꯎꯈꯤꯗ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯐꯥꯟꯁꯤꯡꯁꯦ ꯑꯃꯠꯇ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯎꯖꯕꯗ ꯈꯔ ꯎꯕꯗꯗꯤ ꯒꯣꯕꯤꯟꯗꯒꯤ ꯁꯔꯤꯛ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯒꯣꯕꯤꯟꯗꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯁꯪ ꯂꯩꯕꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯃꯥꯡꯗ ꯑꯆꯧꯕ ꯁꯔꯤꯛ ꯈꯤꯜꯂꯤꯕꯗꯨꯗꯩꯗꯨꯗ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯃꯇꯣꯟꯗꯨꯗ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯑꯅꯤ ꯑꯣꯟꯖꯟꯅꯔꯤꯕ ꯐꯥꯟꯒꯤ ꯃꯈꯥꯗ ꯂꯩꯕ ꯗ꯭ꯔꯦꯒꯣꯟ ꯃꯃꯥꯏ ꯑꯣꯟꯊꯣꯛꯅꯔꯤꯕ ꯑꯅꯤꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯎꯕ ꯎꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯃꯁꯤꯁꯨ ꯇꯦꯛꯊꯕꯒꯤ ꯀꯥꯏꯊꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛ ꯑꯃ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯎꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕꯁꯤ ꯅꯨꯡꯁꯤꯗꯅ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯇꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯦꯛꯇꯤꯀꯦꯜꯗ ꯈꯔ ꯌꯦꯛꯍꯜꯂꯤ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯀꯔꯝꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯊꯝꯃꯤꯕꯅꯣ ꯀꯗꯥꯏꯗꯒꯤ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯔꯒ ꯀꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯂꯥꯛꯈꯤꯕꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯗꯨꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯆꯞ ꯆꯥꯕ ꯈꯪꯕ ꯉꯝꯗꯕꯁꯤꯒꯤꯗꯃꯛꯇ ꯁꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯃꯨꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯉꯩ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯃꯇꯝ ꯈꯔ ꯂꯩꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯐꯤꯕꯝꯁꯤꯁꯨ ꯑꯗꯨꯝ ꯃꯨꯠꯈꯤꯕꯁꯨ ꯌꯥꯏꯑꯕ इवन अखोई मसक है खांगदबसु यायबो अदुना अद ड्रैगन ओंथोंगा लेरिबा अखोई ꯅꯗꯩ ꯕꯔꯃꯥꯗ ꯊꯦꯡꯅꯔꯤꯕ ꯑꯗꯒꯤ ꯂꯥꯏ ꯍꯔꯥꯎꯕꯗꯁꯨ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯏꯟꯗꯣꯅꯦꯁꯤꯌꯥꯒꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣꯗꯒ ꯎꯔꯤꯕ ꯄꯦꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯎꯏꯌꯦꯅ ꯈꯜꯂꯤ ꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯃꯁꯛꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯎꯗ꯭ꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯈꯔꯗꯤ ꯂꯩꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯑꯃꯒ ꯑꯃꯒ ꯃꯥꯟꯅꯕꯅꯤꯅ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁ ꯄꯤꯄꯜ ꯀꯔꯝꯕ ꯒ꯭ꯔꯨꯞꯀꯤꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯁꯤꯕꯨ ꯈꯪꯉꯛꯇꯕ ꯌꯥꯏꯑꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯇꯤ ꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯤ AIꯒꯤ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯇꯦꯡ ꯂꯧꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯗꯣꯀꯨꯃꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟ ꯇꯧꯍꯧꯕ ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛꯅꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯦ ꯇꯥꯍꯧꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯖꯤꯅꯁꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯃꯥꯒꯤꯁꯨ ꯑꯦꯛꯇꯤꯚꯤꯇꯤꯁꯤꯡ ꯑꯁꯦ ꯈꯪꯍꯧꯕ ꯑꯃꯈꯛꯀꯤ ꯃꯇꯝꯗꯣ ꯌꯧꯔꯦ ꯊꯦꯡꯃꯟꯗ꯭ꯔꯤꯉꯩ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯁꯤꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯂꯝꯁꯤꯗ ꯆꯪꯁꯤꯟꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯋꯥꯐꯝ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯊꯝꯖꯔꯤ ꯊꯦꯡꯛ ꯌꯨ ꯑꯣꯜ
Thagachari Oja Inkai Kunazari Professor D.H. Ravikanta Singh, Dean, Students Welfare, Amadi Head, Department of Anthropology, Dhanamanjuri University Bu, Ozaki Mamalyam Laba, Wafang Kayagaloinana, Fajaraba presentation Ama, Uti Bagidama Amuka Hana, Ozabu Thagaba Pondokchari, Lenana, Thoram Makasa Tazarak Pasidi, Dais the Linksin Biriba, Saknairaba, Ikai Kunazariba, Ozakayamna. तांगलबा मतम कया काइथोबिदना थोरमसिबु सरोयाबि बगिदमग अमुका हना थागब फोंदोकचरी लोइनना मखा तारकपो ओइना लेंसिनबिरिबा दाइसता इकाइ खुमनाजरिबा ओजासिंगना मखा तारकपा थौरम मिरें ताबिनबगिदमग मखादा लेंथबिदुना थौरम मिरें ताबिनबा हाइजरी